On our 25th wedding anniversary night, as the warm golden lights bounced off wine glasses and the music swelled, my husband stepped onto the stage with a faint smile, pointed at my face, and declared, "25 years is enough. I want someone younger, and you should move out of this condo tomorrow." The entire ballroom fell silent. I stayed seated, gripping my glass so tightly my nails cut my skin, blood seeping into the white lace. He forgot the condo was my wedding gift from my parents, and I've never let anyone take it from me. As Martin bent down to sign the divorce papers amid the whispers, I stood, took the mic, my voice trembling but firm. "Thank you for the anniversary gift, but you're not the only one with plans tonight." His eyes froze when I pulled out a silver hair clip inside. It was a secret that could wipe out his life. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like so it can reach even further. I still remember that morning clearly. Everything started with something off. Martin got up earlier than usual. He put roses in a vase, poured me a cup of coffee, and set it down gently like he was playing the model husband. "Good morning, Kathy," he said, with such a forced smile I wanted to ask outright, "What are you hiding from me?" The cologne he wore that day wasn't my usual, not the woody scent he'd used for 10 years, but something sweet and sharp, the kind women in their 30s tend to like. When he went to shower, I caught a glimpse of his phone lighting up, "Call G" at 11 a.m. Just that, one small line. But it made my heart go cold. I asked casually, light as air, "Who's G?" Martin hesitated. His eyes flicked past me and then shifted away, his smile gliding back in place. "Oh, Grayson, a partner in Seattle. He wants to talk about a new project." But I've known Martin for more than 25 years. I know every habit, every small tell. And I saw it, his left eyelid twitch. The familiar sign whenever Martin lies. I didn't ask more. I just smiled and turned away, hiding my clenched hands. Around noon, Lorraine, my mother-in-law, came by. She showed up like always, fur coat, triple-strand pearls, heavy Chanel perfume. "Catherine, dear," she sang sweetly, "I just stopped by to see how you're getting the party ready." I invited her to sit, poured tea, and tried to keep it polite. She took a sip, her eyes sweeping the living room as if appraising each item's value. "This condo is still lovely, isn't it?" she said, tone floating. "Your parents really knew how to pick a wedding gift." I smiled and answered, "Yes, they always wanted me to have a safe place to come home to." She gave a thin smile. "Safe? In this life, nothing is truly yours without papers in hand. Speaking of, you still have the Capitol Hill condo title, right?" I paused and looked straight at her. "Same place as always, Mother, in the safe." "Ah, good. You know, with Martin's age now 55 and no grandbabies yet, it's a bit sad. I think, if you two don't have children, maybe you should write a will in favor of my nephews, just in case." I smiled, but inside I went ice cold. "Your nephews?" "Yes, they're very good boys. I'm only thinking about the future, dear." When Lorraine left, her perfume still hanging in the air, I sat stunned for a long while. Everything started to fit together like a dark jigsaw puzzle. Martin's call at 3 a.m. The mysterious appointment with G. My mother-in-law asking about the house papers. A plan was being laid out carefully, and I was the target. That evening, I opened Martin's laptop. He'd changed the old password, our wedding date, 070398, no luck. I tried it reversed, 893070, and got in. When the browser history came up, my chest tightened. A string of searches. How to keep the house in a divorce. Legal tricks for asset division. How to force wife to sign a waiver. I sat frozen. He wasn't just cheating. He was planning to erase me. Around 8 p.m., The phone rang. It was Paige, my college best friend. "Kathy, I have to tell you this. I just saw Martin at City Center, D.C. with a blonde. They were picking out engagement rings." I went silent, my hands turning numb. "What did she look like?" I asked. "About 30. Pretty in a fake way, big curls, fur coat." She was laughing, clinging to his arm. "Kathy, are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said, low. "I just need more time." I didn't sleep that night. I sat alone by the window, watching the rain fall over our quiet Capitol Hill street. 25 years, more than half a life. From the bright young woman I was, to a 55-year-old with lines at my eyes, still loyal, still believing in marriage. And now the man I trusted most was calculating how to take the home my parents left me. I knew Martin wouldn't strike quietly. He loves a spectacle. He would choose a public stage where he could put me down in front of everyone, turn me into the pitiful weak one. And nowhere fit better than our 25th anniversary party, packed with friends, coworkers, and family. The very party that I, the foolish wife, had spent a month preparing. I gave a thin smile. "Fine," I told myself. "If you want theater, I'll give you theater. But this play, I'm writing the script." The next morning, I started prepping. Not dresses or makeup strategy. I reopened Martin's laptop, selected the emails, messages, and browser history tied to the divorce, and copied them to a small USB. I tucked it into the silver hair clip I always wear out my mother's gift, now turned into a counterattack weapon. I also started looking for legal allies. I thought of Brianna Patel, a college friend who's now a family attorney in Georgetown. I didn't say everything, just sent one line. "Bri, I need to talk about someone trying to take my home." I put down my phone and looked up at the mirror. The woman, there with silver strands in brown hair, eyes full of resolve, was no longer the gentle Catherine from 25 years ago. I knew that if I wanted to keep it all, I had to hit back. When Martin came home, he kissed my cheek like nothing had happened. "Wear the blue dress tonight, Kathy. We're going to have a night to remember," he said, in a syrupy tone that almost made me laugh. I answered lightly, "Yes, a night to remember." That evening, I rested my hand on my purse, feeling the USB hidden in the hair clip still safe. Inside my bag were copies of the condo papers, screenshots, bank statements, and a letter I hadn't sent to Brianna. When I entered the Willard Hotel's ballroom, the golden lights shimmered off crystal glasses, and laughter rose around me. Everyone thought this was a celebration of lasting love, but I knew tonight was a battlefield. I adjusted my hair clip, took a deep breath, and smiled as I stepped into the light. No one in that room, not even Martin, knew the woman they saw as the victim was about to flip the table. And with that, the game began. I didn't sleep that night. After the anniversary party, Martin acted like nothing had happened. He showered, put on jazz, poured a glass of wine, and toasted to the next 25 years, as if the public humiliation never occurred. But I knew that smile was just a mask for a colder plan. Around 2 a.m., I heard the bedroom door open slightly. I held my breath, lay still, and pretended to sleep. Hallway light fell across Martin's face as he slipped out. He whispered, low and urgent, as he walked away from the bedroom. I slid to the door, close enough to hear. "We have to stick to the script, Mom," he said softly but clearly. "She won't suspect a thing." Lorraine's voice came through the line, faint but unmistakable. "Everything must look natural. After the party, you get her to sign the papers. Don't go soft, Martin. The quieter she is, the easier it is." I heard him answer briefly, "I know." Then his steps came back, and he lay down like he'd never left. I squeezed my eyes shut, feeling my heart pound. Script. They were acting in my own life. The next morning, Martin left early, said he had a meeting with partners. He kissed my forehead lightly, a cold, perfunctory touch. When the door clicked shut, the condo went silent. I sat up, the wave of suspicion rising like a tide. On the dining table, he'd left his phone. The screen was black, but after a few minutes, a notification popped up: voicemail. I hadn't planned to listen, but my hands moved before my brain. I hit speaker. A man's voice played dry and firm. I already spoke with Mrs. Lorraine. Everything can be arranged. What matters is she signs the waiver of ownership. After that, the condo will be yours. Hale. Hale. I remembered instantly. The G. In Martin's contacts. The one he called Grayson, a Seattle partner. Not a partner. A divorce lawyer. It felt like someone had slapped me hard across the face. I picked up the phone, 6-digit passcode. I tried our wedding date wrong, his birthday wrong. Then a memory flashed. When Paige told me the girl named Tessa picked rings with Martin, she mentioned Tessa's birthday is on March 8th, International Women's Day. I entered 0308 plus. Martin's birth year digits 030865. The phone opened. I took a breath, then started reading. The first text showed up like a cold blade. Tessa, after the anniversary, we're moving into that condo, right? I already picked the curtain color. Martin. Of course. It'll all be ours. My mom has the lawyer covered. She suspects nothing. I scrolled message after message, full of hints, full of contempt. Don't forget the mic. I want to see her face when you say it. She still thinks you love her. Poor thing. They were planning to humiliate me publicly so I'd sign away my rights, weaponizing shame, pride, and the crowd. I didn't cry. I sat up straight, opened settings, uploaded all the messages, photos, and call logs to my personal iCloud, then copied another set to the USB hidden in the silver hair clip. Before turning off the phone, I replayed Lorraine's short recording. As long as she signs, everything's clean. I want to see the transfer papers before Monday. Transfer papers. I repeated it in my head, feeling the chill spread. They didn't just want the condo, they wanted to strip my identity. I needed help. And I knew there was only one person I could trust. Brianna Patel, my college classmate, now a well-known family lawyer in D.C. I called her. Catherine? Oh my God, how long has it been? You sound different, what's going on? I kept my voice steady. Bree, I need to see you. As soon as possible. Can we do lunch today? Not lunch, but 4 p.m. works. My office is still on Massachusetts Avenue. Thanks, Bree. And, please don't mention this call to anyone. Her voice softened. Catherine, you're worrying me, but okay, I'll keep it quiet. I hung up and pressed my forehead to my hand. It felt like I'd finally admitted to myself this marriage was truly over. At Brianna's office, I still looked like any ordinary woman. Beige coat, neat purse, no makeup. But inside, I was a storm. Her office faced a park, tidy and warm. Brianna came out and hugged me tightly. You look the same, Kathy, she said, searching my eyes. But you're hiding something, aren't you? I sat, looked around, and started telling it. Every detail. The middle of the night call, the G. Hale voicemail, Tessa's birthday, the condo. She listened without interrupting. Sometimes she nodded, sometimes she jotted a note. When I finished, Brianna exhaled. It sounds like a movie script, but unfortunately I know this type. You're up against someone who's been coached. G. Hale is a notorious divorce lawyer. And Lorraine, your mother-in-law, right? She's likely the architect. I stayed quiet. Now listen to me, Brianna continued. First, don't let them know you know. Act like nothing's wrong. They only have power if you lose your composure. I nodded. Second, gather evidence. You've backed up the messages good. If you can, record conversations. The more, the better. I filed away each word. Third, she said slowly, separate finances. Do you have your own account? I will today. Do it. And don't leave a trail they can see. Brianna leaned back, thoughtful. Catherine, I have to ask the Capitol Hill condo. Where did the original money come from? My parents, I answered immediately. They bought it as a wedding gift. My name was on the deed first, Martin was added later. Her eyebrows rose. Do you have a copy of the certificate? Yes. At home. Perfect. If we prove it's premarital property, they can't touch it. It felt like someone had cracked open a door to light. But we'll need a lawyer specializing in marital real estate to confirm, Brianna said. Do you remember who handled the paperwork back then? I closed my eyes to recall. The day we signed for the condo, there was a silver-haired man with round glasses and a calm voice. Mr. Whitman, I blurted. He handled everything. His office is on M Street. Great, Brianna said. See him immediately. If he still has the file, that's your legal shield. I nodded and wrote down the address. Before I left, Brianna took my hand. Catherine, hear me. Don't let them turn you into a victim. They're used to you being quiet, soft. Now show them a different Catherine, the one with reason, proof, and the law on her side. I smiled lightly, but inside, the fire was lit. On the way back, D.C.'s sky was dull. Dry leaves blew along the sidewalk. I pulled into a familiar cafe and jotted a pull dar. Quick list. 1. Open a separate account. 2. Call Mr. Whitman. 3. Print copies of house papers. 4. Back up more data to USB. 5. Send Brianna the financial summary. I closed the notebook and looked through the window. Rain had started light but persistent. In the glass, I saw my reflection. No more fear in my eyes, only clarity and cool. They thought I'd break. But they didn't know the woman they were about to betray was the woman who had learned to stand up from betrayal. I started the car, signaled left, and headed for M Street where I'd see Mr. Whitman again, and where my first legal shield would take shape. The next morning, I woke earlier than usual. Fall in D.C. was cold and damp, a white haze on rooftops across the street. I made coffee, put on a knit coat, and left while Martin was still asleep. He said he had an important meeting tonight and would be home late. I just nodded. Any words now could become a double-edged knife. I drove to Mr. Whitman's office on M Street, the old red brick building, worn but solid, like the man I was about to see. He'd handled my condo purchase 25 years ago. I only hoped he still had the records. When I entered, the receptionist recognized my name and smiled. Mr. Whitman is still on the 3rd floor, Miss Catherine. He'll be happy to see you. 3 flights of creaking wooden stairs. The office door was ajar, the smell of old paper and oak washing out. Catherine Miller. My goodness, how many years has it been? Mr. Whitman's voice was warm and honest, just like him. His hair was nearly all white now, but his posture was straight and his eyes sharp. I shook his hand and kept my tone steady. It's been a while, Mr. Whitman. I need your help with a small thing, actually, a very important thing. Go on, the young lady from back then, he chuckled, motioning me to sit. I remember you and Martin. You chose the condo in Capitol Hill, right? Yes. I nodded. But, now, I need to confirm the original funding when we bought it. He frowned slightly, unlocked an old file cabinet. The thick folders were neatly arranged, each drawer labeled by year in a slanted hand. He flipped a few and stopped. Here we are, July 1999. Catherine Miller wire transfer directly from First Federal Bank, account holders Mr. and Mrs. Miller. I held my breath. Is that exact, sir? He pushed his glasses up, double-checked, and nodded. No mistake. The purchase funds came from your parents' account. And on the first deed, only Catherine Miller appears. 2 months after marriage, I received a request to add Martin Cole as a second co-owner, not a purchaser. I went quiet for a few seconds. That single detail felt like a beam of light cutting through heavy clouds. What does that mean? I hesitated. If there's a divorce? He finished for me. It means the condo is considered your premarital property. Martin can only claim any increased value if he proves he invested in major structural renovations like a new roof, structural upgrades. If it was only cosmetic, he has no claim. I smiled in a way I hadn't in years. Do you still have the originals? Of course. I'll print you a stamped copy. Come back tomorrow afternoon, I'll have it ready. I stood and shook his hand, feeling warmth return to my palm. Thank you, Mr. Whitman. You just saved me from a nightmare. He smiled kindly. No, Catherine. I only helped you recall the truth, something that never belonged to anyone but you. Driving back, the rain started again. I turned on some music, but my mind kept turning. If the condo is proven premarital, Martin can't take it even with a team of lawyers. I gripped the wheel and told myself, this is the first shield. Before going home, I stopped at the bank. I asked to open a new account in my name only. I want my monthly salary and my personal savings moved. Here, I said. The banker looked at me and gave a professional smile. Would you like statements mailed to your home? No, I said quickly. Email only, to my personal address. A small decision, but I knew it was the first step toward freedom. When I got home, Martin was in front of the mirror, fixing his tie. He turned and looked me up and down. You should change your hairstyle, he said, with a hint of boredom, and maybe go to a spa. You look tired. I set my bag on the table and kept my voice calm. I just had a long day, that's all. Martin came closer and put a hand on my shoulder, the familiar touch that now made my skin crawl. Catherine, you have to understand. We men still like women who take care of themselves. You don't want to be compared to women in their 30s, right? He spoke as if each word were a knife. I smiled, picked up the magazine he'd tossed onto the table, and thought only, keep talking, Martin. The more, the better. In my coat pocket, the tiny recorder had been on since before I walked in. Every word, his jabs at my looks, the comparisons to younger women was captured, clearly, word for word. He had no idea. When Martin left, I sat down, opened my phone, and saved the audio file to a private iCloud folder. I titled it Evidence #3, Verbal and Emotional Abuse. I had messages, calls, and now voice. 3 pieces for a complete picture. In the evening, while I was putting together a simple meal, my phone pinged with a new email from the Willard Hotel. Subject, Event Confirmation, Cole Anniversary. I opened it and nearly choked. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Cole, we confirm the package for 100 guests at the Grand Ballroom, including dinner, wine, and a live band. Total cost, $47,000. The amount has been paid in full from the joint account ending in 4,472. I leaned back in my chair. $47,000. The savings I'd built up over 2 years. And he spent it not to honor our marriage, but to bury me in humiliation. I took a deep breath and picked up a pen. An old brown leather notebook, Journal of Facts. I wrote the header, Battle List, Assets, Evidence, Witnesses. 1. Assets. Capitol Hill Condo confirm premarital source, Whitman. Personal account at First Federal open today, USB and iCloud holding evidence. 2. Evidence. Recording of the call between Martin and Lorraine. Martin Tessa messages. Event email for $47,000 from the joint account. Insults and personal put-downs, tonight's recording. 3. Witnesses. Brianna Patel, attorney, can confirm the staged divorce plan. Mr. Whitman, the original condo file preparer. Paige, my friend, who saw Martin with Tessa. I underlined the last line and added, "Don't cry in front of the crowd, only the truth." I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and sat in the dark. Outside, rain tapped on the awning. I heard every drop like a countdown. Martin thought I was weak, that I'd tremble when pushed out of my home. He didn't know I already had a legal shield, clear evidence, and iron resolve. When lightning flashed outside the window, I caught my reflection in the glass. My eyes no longer belonged to a desperate wife. They were the eyes of a woman ready to strike back. On Monday morning, as soon as I opened the door to grab the paper, I saw a thick envelope stamped deep red with Notariat Zurich, a Swiss notary office. I frowned. I didn't know anyone there. I opened it. 3 documents slid onto the table. The first line froze me for a few seconds. Regarding the inheritance of Mrs. Margaret Adler, Swiss citizen, residing in Zurich. Aunt Margaret. My maternal great-aunt single, loved to travel, rarely in touch but always sent a postcard every Christmas. She used to joke that if I didn't give up on marriage, I should at least keep an escape route. For myself. I had laughed then. Now her words rang in my head like a prophecy. I read every line carefully. Condo in Zurich, Bahnhofstrasse, 42. Value 1,200,000 CHF. Credit Suisse bank account, 890,000 CHF. Vacation condo in Miami Beach, Florida, $1,300,000. Total value over $3 million. And I am the sole heir. I let the paper fall and sat still. Sunlight filtered through the curtains, laying trembling specks across my hands. $3 million. Enough that I'd never have to bow to anyone again, not even Martin. I breathed in and forced myself to steady. This wasn't just luck. This was a second exit, arriving exactly when I needed it most. I called Brianna right away, my voice still shaking. "Bri, I just got an inheritance letter from Aunt Margaret," she passed. She left me property, a condo in Zurich, one in Miami, and a bank account. On the line, Brianna went quiet for a few seconds. "What did you say? Zurich? Miami? Yeah, about $3 million total. Catherine," she blurted, "do you understand? This is the perfect escape ticket. But the most important thing, don't tell anyone. I plan to keep it quiet." "Good. And you need to immediately open a personal account to receive the funds. Don't let any transaction touch the joint account. Martin must not know." I wrote down every word. "Bri," I said slowly, "I think this will be Plan B. If they drag me out of the house, I'll go to Miami right away." "Start over." "Exactly," Brianna said. "You'll have a condo, money, independence. But first, for legal protection, I'll send a preservation notice to the bank to keep them from touching joint funds until the court rules." She promised to handle it that day. I exhaled, lighter than I'd felt in weeks finally. Something solid under my feet. That afternoon, I went to First Federal to open a multi-currency personal account. The manager was a middle-aged woman with a short blonde cut, professional but warm eyes. "I'd like to open a personal account in US dollars and CHF, I said, keeping my voice even. "You want a fully private personal account?" "Completely private." I signed with sweaty palms. When she finished printing the forms, I thanked her and asked, "If there's a wire from Switzerland, what do I need to do?" "Just provide this SWIFT code and IBAN info. The system will auto-convert, and no one but you will have access." I folded the paper and tucked it into my bag. A small step, but I knew I'd just laid the first brick of my independence. The next day, I went to the Swiss Consulate General in Washington, D.C., to complete the inheritance paperwork. An older official with a tall frame and silver frames reviewed the documents, checked my ID, then spoke gently. Mrs. Adler was very meticulous. The inheritance file was prepared in 2015. She wrote to my niece, Catherine Miller, who reminds me of my younger self. May she never let anyone silence her. I gripped the edge of the desk. I never knew a message from the dead could make my heart ache like that. After a little over an hour, he handed me a stamped file. All Swiss assets will transfer after kinship verification. The Miami Beach condo transfers immediately. You may use that property starting today, he said. My condolences and congratulations as well. I thanked him, my voice hoarse. As I stepped out, shafts of sunlight cut through the leaves and fell across my shoulder. A cold breeze off the Potomac brought a strange calm. From this moment, I knew I wasn't cornered anymore. That night, I opened my laptop and logged into the new account. The numbers showed 0 now, but in a few days, when the Zurich funds arrived, everything would change. I felt an unexpected peace. I put the new documents into my private lockbox, the metal one only I have a key to. I set it near the file cabinet and opened the household safe. We'd always shared this safe. Martin liked to brag to friends that my wife and I have no secrets. I smirked at the memory. Tonight, I set up biometric security fingerprint recognition for me alone. If Martin tries to open it, it'll lock for 10 minutes and sound an alert. I placed the most important items inside. Copies of the Capitol Hill condo papers, Zurich and Miami inheritance files, a copy of the $47,000 event email, a backup USB from the hair clip. When the door shut, it felt like I'd raised an invisible fortress around myself. Brianna texted near midnight. Preservation notice sent to First Federal. They'll freeze any suspicious activity from the joint account. Get some sleep. I replied. Thank you. Tomorrow I'll write an internal memo to my boss, Victor, just in case Martin stirs things up. Victor Lang is the CFO where I work. Strict but fair. I know if things blow up, he'll have my back as long as I can prove the truth. I sat at my desk and wrote a 2-page memo, clear and concise. I, Catherine Miller, am currently facing a severe marital crisis. There is a possibility my husband, Martin Cole, may engage in defamation or spread falsehoods to damage my professional reputation. I affirm that I will not allow personal matters to affect my work performance and will maintain professional ethics. However, I ask the company to be aware so as to avoid misunderstandings. I signed it, put the original in my file folder, and set it aside for Victor in the morning. I couldn't sleep that night. The clock ticked steadily on the wall like a distant heartbeat. I stepped onto the balcony, looking over the city lights stretching out. The evening downpour had washed the sky clean. Washington glittered under a damp haze. I closed my eyes and pictured myself in the new Miami condo. Windows facing the sea, waves rolling in, air salted with wild orange blossoms. No one there would mention age, wrinkles, or women in their 30s. There it would just be me, free and at peace. But I also knew that to get there I had to finish the play Martin was about to stage. He believed I'd crumble when shamed in public. He didn't know I'd already prepared Act 2, the reversal. I opened my notebook and added the final line under counterplan. Reversal speech for the party. Stay calm, no tears. Say little, hit hard. Cite lawful proof. Deed, inheritance, deceit evidence. End with, sometimes, 25 years still isn't enough for someone to learn honesty. I closed the notebook. The night went quiet, only wind slipping through the door frame. I sat in the dark, listening as my heartbeat grew steady again, slow, sure, like a woman who had taken back control of her life. And I told myself, Martin, you can set the stage, hire the band, rehearse your lines, but I will decide how the curtain falls. 2 days before the party, I decided to go to the Willard Hotel, the stage Martin chose for ending our marriage. I couldn't just sit and wait. I needed to know exactly where he'd strike, in front of whom, and how. The Willard, in the heart of Washington, D.C., was still as grand as a palace in the city. Gilded ceilings, marble inlays, a lobby blazing with crystal chandeliers. People call it the House of Historic Speeches. Maybe Martin liked that, standing before a crowd to deliver the speech he thought would mark his new chapter. I paused in the lobby, pretending to be a curious guest scouting a venue for a friend's anniversary. The front desk clerk smiled and led me to the grand ballroom. The doors opened, and the scent of polished wood and fresh wine mixed with white roses drifted in the air. In the center of the wide room was a small stage, a central mic hanging above with the Willard logo. I walked slowly, clocking every detail. The mic, position, the camera paths, the light angles. Everything pointed to the center where Martin would stand. I closed my eyes and pictured it. Hundreds seated around round tables, applause, the clink of silverware. Martin smiling, lifting the mic, declaring, 25 years is enough. I would lift my head, stand up, and flip the script on the spot. I opened my eyes and looked up at the ceiling audio system. Does this mic cover the whole room? I asked. The clerk smiled. Yes, ma'am. Our audio is checked daily. The central mic carries clearly to the very back. Perfect, I replied with a smile. As I stepped out of the grand ballroom, a voice came from behind. Catherine? Oh, what a coincidence. I turned. Tessa, the young woman Paige said had been ring shopping with Martin, stood there in a pale yellow dress, phone to her ear. She was nearly 20 years younger than me, carefully made up but with a nervous gleam in her eyes. She half smiled, cocked her head. Oh, I'm talking to the event manager. He says there's a big party this week for a couple who own a fancy Capitol Hill condo. Guess what they're hosting it here? Maybe you've heard? I kept my face even and smiled politely. Washington is small. Wish your friend good luck. Tessa let out a soft laugh and glanced down at her phone. Yeah, that condo will change owners soon. A woman should know when to let go. I looked her straight in the eye, the smile still there. And sometimes, a smart woman knows when to stay quiet so she can act. She hesitated, then gave a stiff smile and pretended to keep talking. I turned and walked away, my heartbeat slow and steady. At this point, I didn't feel anger, only pity. I stopped at the events desk, using the Friends celebration line to ask, could I see a cost sheet and seating chart? I want to understand how to arrange 100 guests. The manager, a tangent-skinned woman with a name tag that read, Monique, gladly handed me a printout. I bent over it, and my eyes stopped at the last line. Overflow table. Special guest. Grayson Hale, Esquire. I nearly laughed. Grayson Hale, divorce lawyer. Not only backing Martin but listed as a guest of honor. Ironic they planned to announce a divorce in public and invited the lawyer to witness it. I borrowed Monique's pen and circled the line on my copy. Thank you, I said. Everything is perfect. I'll book soon. Happy to help, ma'am. I stepped out of the hotel, the paper trembling in the wind. That afternoon, I sat in a cafe across the street and reviewed everything I'd gathered: seating chart, guest list, mic position. I opened notes on my phone and wrote, Martin speaks dead center in the lightbox, Tessa front right table, Lorraine table 3 near the stage, Hale overflow table, back exit left of the dais. I closed the notebook and sipped a cold coffee. The game was set. I only had to walk onto the board. When I got home, dusk had fallen. Martin wasn't back yet. Instead, I found Lorraine in the living room, legs crossed, teacup in hand. The scene reminded me of a courtroom where she'd made herself judge. "Oh, Catherine," she cooed, her sweetness almost chilling. "I just dropped this off for you." A free consultation voucher from Hale and Partners. They're very reputable. I think you should see them soon before anything unexpected happens. I took the envelope and saw the deep blue logo. Hale and Partners, family law experts, printed sharp. I smiled lightly. Thank you, Mother. I'll consider it. Lorraine set down her cup and studied me. You know, in marriage, whoever moves slower always loses. Yes, I said softly, eyes never leaving hers. That's why I always prepare first. She raised an eyebrow, not catching my meaning. When she left, I pulled out my phone, snapped a photo of the Hale and Partners voucher, and saved it to a folder named Flip File. Martin came home close to midnight, buzzing like he'd hit the jackpot. Kathy, you're going to love this, he said, shrugging off his coat and opening his laptop to show me a draft of his speech. I've been writing all week. That night, everyone will understand how things should end. Don't worry, I'll make it look good for both of us. I've learned that kind words can be the sharpest knives. Have you ever heard something that sounded gentle but shattered your heart? If you have, share a memory or feeling in the comments. Someone else might see themselves in your story. I looked at the screen. The title read, A New Chapter of Freedom. I swallowed my anger and smiled. Great, Martin. I've always trusted your way with words. He didn't realize I meant something else. He laughed, gave me a half hug, and headed upstairs. I stood in the living room, the laptop's glow reflecting in the window glass. My silhouette looked small but unyielding. He thought the knife was in his hand, but the real blade was in mine. The next morning, I gathered all critical papers into a brown leather envelope. Mr. Whitman's confirmation of the condo's funding source. Zurich and Miami files with transfer papers. Bank statements and notarized letters. I sealed it, put it in my bag, and did one last check. In the mirror, I saw a 55-year-old woman with a neat bun, clear eyes, and squared shoulders. Not someone afraid, someone ready for battle. Before leaving, I opened a drawer and took out an old backup phone. I turned on video mode and set it to auto-upload to the cloud. I'd wear it all night, hidden under a light coat. I didn't know how the party would end, but I knew this. Everything would be captured, every word, every glance, every second Martin dug his own hole. I stood in the hallway and caught the lavender scent from my scarf, my mother's favorite. I tightened my grip on the bag and told myself, I won't cry, Mom. I'll speak with the truth. Then I stepped out, leaving the quiet condo behind, ready for the biggest fight of my life, the one named the Willard. That night, the Willard blazed like a giant jewelry box in downtown Washington, D.C. As I stepped out of the car, the jazz band in the lobby was playing Moon River, the tune Martin once said he was sick of because it's old. I walked slowly under the crystal fixtures in a navy dress that fit cleanly, my hair pinned back. Not flashy, not showy, just enough that no one could dismiss me. A server bowed slightly. Good evening, Mrs. Cole. Your husband is welcoming guests in the grand ballroom. Thank you, I said with a small smile. My voice sounded steady, even though my heart thudded like it wanted to tear out of my chest. The ballroom glittered under the chandeliers. More than 100 guests were already there. Evening gowns, tuxedos, champagne flutes, polite laughter, an orchestra of pretense. At the center table, Martin was shaking hands with my boss, Victor Lang, and several colleagues from finance. I spotted Brianna, my attorney friend, seated toward the back, giving me the slightest nod. We're good. Lorraine, in a black dress stitched with silver, made her rounds, boasting at each table. My son has truly found the right path. A successful man needs someone who can keep up, not just stand beside him. I nearly laughed. She talked like I was a used item ready for clearance. Then, like a cold knife, the MC's voice cut through. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a round of applause for Mr. Martin Cole, the man of the night, celebrating 25 years of marriage. Applause echoed, glasses chimed. I took a long breath, scanning the room and memorizing faces. Tessa at the front table, smiling too brightly. The central mic was waiting. Martin stepped onto the stage. He adjusted his tie and flashed the smile. I knew too well the one for an audience, not for a wife. "Thank you, everyone," he began, full of confidence. 25 years. That's long and sometimes too long. Polite chuckles rippled. A few raised their glasses. "I used to think marriage was forever," Martin went on, "but I realized that sometimes what we call love is just a mistake of youth." I heard quick breaths nearby, then a few uneasy whispers. Martin kept smiling, calm as if delivering a keynote. "Catherine and I have been through a lot together. But time changes people. I've grown. I need someone who understands me more, someone more energetic, not someone drab, timid, afraid of change." I saw Lorraine lift her head and nod with pride. Tessa bit her lip, pretending to be moved. And my colleagues, the people who once respected me, were wide-eyed in shock. Martin held his head high. "That's why I want to make this public, in front of the people who matter most. Catherine and I will separate amicably. I propose we divide assets fairly. The Capitol Hill condo should belong to whoever can use it more effectively, and I believe I should be the one to keep living there. She needs a fresh start." A wave of murmurs rippled across the room. "Fairly?" someone muttered. "Right here? That's outrageous." I stayed seated. I only noticed the champagne glass in my hand felt a little cold. My boss, Victor Lang, frowned and turned toward Martin, but Martin kept talking, smug. "This isn't an ending, it's freedom for both of us. I hope you'll bless us. And wish Catherine well in finding what she deserves." A faint round of applause followed. I knew most of it came from people who didn't know what else to do. I set my glass on the table. The tap against the tray sounded hollow. I stood, walked slowly to the stage. My long dress brushed the marble floor. Every eye turned to me. "Excuse me," I said, low but clear. "I think I should say a few words too." Martin turned, a flicker of unease in his eyes. "Catherine, that's not necessary," he said under his breath, forcing a smile. "Don't make a scene." I raised my hand, light but firm. "You've talked for 10 minutes. I only need 3. The MC hesitated, looked at Martin, then back at me. I smiled, stepped forward, and asked for the mic. A breathless silence fell. The light reflected on my face. I looked around at the people who once believed in our model family, now stunned. I drew a slow breath and spoke, measured and deliberate. "Interesting to hear you talk about mistakes of youth, Martin. But if anyone here thinks I didn't know this was coming, you might be underestimating a woman who has lived 25 years under the same roof with you." A few whispers stirred in the room. Martin tried to smile, stepped up, reaching for the mic, but I shifted aside. "You said you want to divide the assets fairly." "Fine." I paused and glanced toward the corner. "But before we divide anything, why don't we ask your attorney, Mr. Grayson Hale, sitting right there, whether that condo belongs to you?" Heads turned. Grayson Hale, in a gray suit, froze, color draining from his face. Martin jolted. "Catherine, what nonsense are you talking about?" I pulled a brown envelope from my bag. The rustle of paper carried through the mic. "I won't waste anyone's time. This is a confirmation from Whitman Law, who handled the condo purchase in 1999. The funds were transferred directly from Mr. and Mrs. Miller's account. My parents, and the deed listed only my name before you were added 2 months after our wedding. By law, that's premarital property. You have no legal claim unless you prove you paid for major improvements and you never put in a cent." The room felt vacuumed of air. A man at the front table let out an, "Oh my God!" I went on, calm. "And there's more. If you still want to talk, division of assets. I'm afraid we'll need a few more numbers." I opened the envelope and pulled out 3 more pages. This is an inheritance file from a Zurich notary, confirming I'm the sole heir of my aunt, Margaret Adler, including a condo in Zurich, a bank account with more than 800,000 Swiss francs, and a Miami Beach condo worth more than $1,300,000. Total value over $3 million. A murmur swept the room. Tessa went pale, Lorraine's jaw dropped, and Martin, he stood frozen, eyes blown wide in disbelief. I gave a small smile. So, dear, I don't need a fresh start. I already have one. And the Capitol Hill condo, you can keep dreaming. Silence fell, the background music ticking on like a taunt. Martin forced a wobbling smile, voice shaking. Catherine, did you set this up ahead of time? Are you trying to embarrass me? I tilted my head, voice soft. No, Martin. You did that yourself. I just turned on the light. A burst of applause rose from the back, where Brianna sat. Others joined. Victor Lang stood, arms crossed, and nodded. Mrs. Cole, he said loudly, I think you've just taught us a lesson in backbone and preparation. I smiled, thanking him with my eyes. Martin ducked his head, face burning. Lorraine looked around, trying to say something, but no one listened. And Tessa, the one who'd bragged a big condo, would soon be hers, sat bowed, her glass trembling in her hand. I lowered the mic, steady but firm. Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm sorry the program changed. But sometimes, the truth needs to be said, even if it ruins a party. I set the mic down and turned from the stage amid rising chatter. Behind me, Martin called out, voice cracking, Catherine, you can't. I stopped, looked back, gaze level and cold. You're right, Martin. 25 years is enough. But the one leaving the condo isn't me. I walked, out of the grand ballroom to scattered applause that was spreading an echo both painful and freeing. The doors closed behind me, and I knew the silver night had ended a marriage, but opened a life of freedom. I stood beneath the Willards' crystal lights, mic in hand, feeling hundreds of eyes on me, shock, curiosity, confusion, and the second-hand shame for a man who'd just slapped his own reputation. The air was heavy, like a pane of glass. Martin was still on the dais, slack-faced, mouth open with no words. I heard Lorraine at table 3 whisper, "Oh, God," as if she'd just watched her own dream collapse. Holding the mic, my voice rang clear, calm, but edged in steel. You're right about one thing, Martin. 25 years is enough. But unlike you, I didn't spend 25 years lying. I spent them learning to see the truth and protect myself. A few wows popped from a corner. Someone whispered, "What is happening?" I opened my bag and took out the brown file I'd prepared. My hands didn't shake. I lifted the first page, the red seal bold for all to see. This is a confirmation from Whitman Law, the firm that handled the Capitol Hill condo purchase in 1999. According to the legal documents, the funds came directly from my parents' account, Mr. and Mrs. Miller. The only name on the original title was Catherine Miller, that's me. 2 months after the wedding, the name Martin Cole was added as a second co-owner, not a purchaser. By law, this condo is a premarital gift and cannot be split in any divorce proceeding. I lowered the page and looked straight at Martin. My voice was no longer gentle. So you can only touch half the old cabin in Virginia and half the Lexus. Everything else you have no claim. A fresh wave of whispers spread. Guests in the back leaned in to murmur. Someone even let out a disbelieving laugh. Martin stepped forward, voice shaking. Catherine, are you turning a party into a courtroom? I tilted my head, a cool smile. No, Martin, I'm repeating the truth you tried to hide. If it embarrasses you, that's not my fault. I set the file on the table and pulled the second stack. 3 weeks ago, I received an inheritance letter from Zurich. My aunt, Margaret Adler, passed away and left me everything. A Zurich condo valued at 1,200,000 Swiss francs. A Credit Suisse account with more than 800,000 francs, and a Miami Beach condo worth more than $1,300,000. Total value is over $3 million, including more than $1 million in cash already transferred to my personal account. Chairs scraped. Eyes widened. A few women whispered, "She's wealthier than we thought." I looked around, voice even, so if anyone here thinks I'm clinging to the Capitol Hill condo because I'm afraid of losing a roof, sorry. I have 2 places to live, and one of them faces the ocean. Tessa, the oh-so-young marketing assistant, stiffened, her face drained, lips trembling like she'd swallowed ice. Lorraine sat frozen, gripping her wineglass until it shattered, red splashing her dress. I took a long breath and said, "But that isn't the best part. For 3 weeks I've known your script. Every line you planned to say, every step you meant to take, every word you'd use to humiliate me. And I recorded it all." The room went pin-drop quiet. I touched the silver hair clip, slid it free. One end popped open, revealing a neatly hidden USB. I plugged it into the DJ's laptop and nodded to the tech. The big screen behind me lit up. On it, texts between Martin and Tessa. "After the anniversary, the condo is ours. You promise, Dee? I don't want to hide forever. Don't worry. Mom talked to Hale. She'll sign the waiver." A chorus of gasps. Then the next clip. A voicemail over the speakers. Lorraine's voice, cold. "Dee, I've spoken with Mr. Hale. Everything's arranged as long as she signs the waiver. Let the party handle the rest." She won't dare push back. A few guests' jaws dropped. Someone said, "Oh my." Martin lurched toward the screen, shouting, "Turn it off." "Who gave you this?" I raised a hand, still even. "You spent $47,000 of our shared savings on this party, not to celebrate love, but to publicly shame me." "So, Martin, it's only fair everyone sees who the liar is." The room erupted in whispers. People stared at Martin like he'd just been unmasked. I addressed the guests, colleagues, friends, family who'd watched our marriage from day one. "Ladies and gentlemen, I don't need pity. I need the truth. I spent 25 years in silence, thinking staying quiet protected happiness. Today I know. Silence in the face of deceit only empowers the cruel. I'm not here to beg for sympathy. I'm here to assert my legal rights, my moral rights, and my right to be respected like anyone else." Scattered claps spread, then swelled. A few people stood. I saw Brianna lift her head, pride in her eyes. At the back, Grayson Hale, the divorce lawyer, shot to his feet and tried to slip out. Guests near the door blocked him. "Is he Martin's lawyer?" someone called out. "Exactly," I said, voice sharp. "And he's the one who set up the plan to force me to sign away my property." Hale ducked his head, stammering, I'm only following my client's requests." A tall man looked like one of Victor's guests stepped in front of him. "Men like you disgrace the profession." Hale bowed and slunk off under a fog of contempt. I turned to Victor Lang. He was still at the front table, gaze stern. When I finished, he stood and looked straight at Martin. "Martin Cole." His voice like a gavel. "I don't know what made you think you could do this in front of colleagues, clients, and leadership. But trust me, we'll be reviewing your position at the company." Martin blanched, fists clenched. "Victor, please let me explain." "No need." Victor cut him off, turning to me. "Catherine, I'm sorry to witness this, but I admire how you handled it calm, evidential, and with your dignity intact." I nodded my thanks, my throat tight not from tears but from dignity restored. The room was silent as I stepped down. Martin tried, "Catherine, don't go. We can talk." I stopped and looked him in the eye. "We've said enough, Martin. You spoke with lies." "I spoke with truth, and tonight the truth won." I set the mic on the table, The soft click sounded like a period. No one said a word, only the stray music and lights bouncing off the glossy floor. I walked out, back straight, chin lifted. Behind me, voices rose, whispers, sighs, someone clapping again. When the big door closed, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. Bright eyes, a steady face, a slight smile. Tonight I didn't just reclaim a condo, honor, or assets. I reclaimed myself, the woman who once thought silence was safe and now knows the truth, even late, is the brightest light. As the grand ballroom doors shut behind me, the inside exploded. Noise spilled through the gap glass breaking, a rush of chatter. Someone shouted, "Get this on video! My God, is this real?" Another voice jumped in. "She's right. I've seen him with that woman more than once." I stood on the marble corridor, the big mirror throwing back warm gold light. Behind the glass, the storm was starting. Inside, chaos. Phones out, gossip, curses, and bitter laughs pelted the gala like hail. Martin stood stranded on stage, white-lipped, trembling as if slapped. He tried to speak, but the mic lay where I'd left it. No one wanted to hear him. I heard Tessa, shrill and furious, "Say it, Martin! Tell them! Tell them she made it up!" Then a sharp crack. She slammed a glass on the table, voice shaking, out of control. "You said you'd pay off the debt. You said you'd get me the condo. You borrowed $20,000 from Chase, $15,000 from Wells Fargo, and then $8,000 from those fast credit places to keep me, didn't you?" The room blew up. A man blurted, "Oh my God, he's in debt." A woman turned to her friend. "And he still threw a $47,000 party?" Unreal. Martin stumbled off the stage, reaching for Tessa's hand. She yanked away, nearly shouting, "You think I'm crazy enough to stay with a bankrupt mess?" Near the stage, Lorraine lurched to her feet, face flushed, hands shaking. "What? Bank loans?" she screamed, voice cracking. "What have you done to my life, Martin?" Phone swung toward her, catching it all, the mother collapsing, the son stunned, the young lover shrinking as her mask was stripped. Lorraine sank back down, clutching her head, muttering to herself, "I mortgaged the house to pay. Your legal fees. And now it's all gone." No one dared move closer. They just watched, like a play they never expected to see. Some had already started posting. I heard keyboard taps. Someone reading out captions. Number Silver Night Trader. The Willards Trader in a Silver Night. 25 years of marriage ends in a financial and affair scandal. Within minutes, I knew that hashtag would be spreading online. Nothing is crueler than public opinion once it chooses a side, and tonight it chose the side of truth. Grayson Hale, the divorce lawyer, had vanished. A hotel staffer hurried to his table, flustered. "Mrs. Lorraine," the guest at this table, left without settling his bill. Lorraine only stared, beyond words. A security guard approached, radio in hand, and spoke quietly. "Mrs. Cole, the man who exited the east lobby, got into a car and isn't returning." "That's fine," I said softly. "Let him go. The law will find him one day." The rear doors opened. My boss, Victor Lang, stepped out, stride steady though his face was tight with anger. He stopped in front of me, voice rough but sincere. "Catherine, are you all right?" I smiled and nodded. "I am, Victor. More than ever." He exhaled. "Let me say this, no matter what, I'm on your side. No one deserves this, least of all someone with your backbone." "Thank you," I said. "Honestly, tonight isn't just an ending. It's a release." Victor squeezed my shoulder, respect warm in his eyes, then waved a few colleagues to head out. I called a cab. The driver was an older man, maybe 70, wearing a cap, gentle smile. He opened the door with a small nod. "Lovely night, ma'am. These fancy events always make folks happy." I slid into the back seat, smiled lightly, eyes on the golden shards of the Willard in the window. "Yes," I said softly, "a lovely night. Because it changed my life." He glanced at me in the rear view with a kind smile. Not many people can say that with real peace in their voice. I answered quietly, "Peace comes from knowing you've said enough." The car eased down Pennsylvania Avenue. I leaned back, watching the bright building recede. Inside, everything was still breaking. Martin was trying to scoop up the scraps. I knew because, just before I left, I'd seen him kneel beside Tessa, hand shaking at her dress. "Please don't go. I'll explain, But Tessa shook him off, eyes cold as steel. "Explain what? You think I'm stupid? I won't shoulder your debt. I won't have my name tied to yours. And, Martin, Catherine is the one worth respecting." I heard it clearly, echoing through the half-closed door. Martin stood there, stunned, shoulders collapsed, while Tessa turned and walked away. Lorraine still sat there, hands on her head, voice trembling. "What have you done to my life? You've killed the family's honor." No one answered. Staff had started clearing the Fallon. Tables. Spoons, forks, and glasses clinked like metal on a coffin lid. A group of younger guests walked by, talking openly. "He really tried to serve divorce papers during the anniversary?" "Yep, and got owned on the spot. I recorded it. It's definitely going viral. The hashtag Silver Night Traitor is already trending." Those words rang like the final hammer blow to Martin's reputation. I leaned my head against the window, watching the slow stream of night traffic. In the reflection, my face no longer showed anger or bitterness, only stillness remained. I didn't see victory, I only saw that I was free. Free from a hollow marriage, free from the empty shell of CEO's wife, free from the kind of love I'd tried to salvage for half a lifetime. I knew that once tonight passed, everything would change. The press might come, social media might buzz, but I wasn't afraid anymore, because the only thing that mattered was that I hadn't let anyone rewrite the story of my life but me. The cab stopped in front of the Capitol Hill condo, the home that once symbolized our marriage, now the fortress of my independence. I paid and thanked the driver. He looked at me for a moment and said, "I don't know what happened in there, but you walked out like someone who just beat the whole world." I let out a small laugh. "No, sir. I only beat myself." He nodded, pulled away, and left me standing under the soft amber streetlight. I looked up at my condo, the place where I had cried, laughed, and been afraid. Now it was quiet, steady, as if waiting for me to return. Tonight, a chapter closed to applause and whispers. But for me, it wasn't a curtain fall, it was the opening cue for a life that was free, strong, and no longer controlled by anyone. And inside the Willard, far behind me, Martin, the man who once believed he was the director of this play, was now just a failed actor in the tragedy he wrote for himself. 3 months after, the silver night at the Willard, I stepped into another place that was just as bright and eerily quiet, Courtroom 4 at the District of Columbia Courthouse. Instead of crystal lights and violins, there was only the smell of paper, polished wood, and the steady tap of a gavel, sounds not meant for feelings, only for truth and law. I sat at the petitioner's table with Brianna Patel, my college friend, now my attorney, beside me. Her hair was tied back, eyes sharp, voice firm. She looked more like a warrior than the woman who used to eat midnight pizza with me before exams. Across from us sat Martin in an old, wrinkled suit. No confident smile, no executive swagger. He sat still, head slightly bowed, eyes drifting like a man who'd lost his compass. In the row behind him, Lorraine huddled with a tissue in hand. No one looked at them with admiration anymore. Judge Rebecca Yates, a silver-haired woman with a stern face, looked up at both sides. "We are hearing the divorce case of Catherine Miller Cole and Martin Cole." Case number 2025, D1472. Have the parties agreed to the basic terms? Brianna rose, composed. Your Honor, the petitioner, Mrs. Catherine, agrees to a no-fault divorce. However, we request a clear determination of property and personal debt under the law based on specific financial evidence. The judge nodded. Very well. We'll start with property. Brianna opened her case file and produced a stamped packet from Whitman and Associates. Your Honor, this legal document from Whitman Law, dated 1999, confirms that the Capitol Hill condo was purchased entirely with funds transferred directly from the account of Mr. and Mrs. Miller, Mrs. Catherine's parents. The condo was originally titled solely in Mrs. Catherine's name. 2 months after the wedding, Mr. Martin's name was added as a second co-owner, not as a purchaser. Under D.C. Family Law, Section 200. 2. Subsection 4. Property gifted or inherited prior to marriage is considered separate property and is not divided upon divorce. She set the paperwork on the bench. Judge Yates lifted it, checked the seal, and gave a slight nod. Properly documented. Does the respondent object? Martin's attorney, a thin, harried man with a rough voice, stood and tried to push back. Your Honor, my client believes the condo was jointly used for 25 years. Therefore, the judge cut in. Shared use is not the same as shared financial ownership. Without evidence that Mr. Cole made substantial contributions to the property's value, the court cannot treat it as marital property. Is there any proof that Mr. Cole invested in, renovated, or paid for major improvements? The lawyer faltered. No, Your Honor. Only ordinary living expenses. Then the court recognizes the Capitol Hill condo as the separate property of Mrs. Catherine Miller Cole. It will not be divided. I felt my shoulders lighten. Martin dropped his gaze, hands clenched, as if trying to hold on to something slipping away. The judge continued. And the Virginia cabin and the Lexus? Brianna answered. Both were purchased after the marriage using joint funds, so we agree to split them equally as required. Very well, the judge said. Debts? Brianna opened her laptop and presented a detailed summary. Your Honor, 3 debts are listed on Mr. Talatiti. Martin Cole's credit file. $20,000 from Chase, $15,000 from Wells Fargo, and $8,000 from a fast credit company called Evercash. Total, $43,000. According to the spending records, most of these funds were used for personal transactions, specifically gifts, restaurant bills, hotel bookings, and a $47,000 event payment at the Willard Hotel, none of which had my client's consent. The judge turned to Martin. Mr. Cole, do you confirm this? Martin swallowed, voice husky. I may have overspent, but... She cut him off. No but. The court finds these are personal debts incurred independently and not for the family's benefit. Mr. Relistor Cole is fully responsible. Behind him, Lorraine whispered. Oh, Lord. Martin bowed his head, shoulders sagging. I stayed still, hands lightly clasped to keep calm. Brianna went on, Your Honor, we also submit a digital evidence set, screenshots of messages between Mr. Cole and Miss Tessa Hill, a voicemail from Mrs. Lorraine Cole, and the invoices confirming event costs and the loans. She handed a USB to the clerk and added, These materials have been authenticated by a digital forensics technician. They show the money was used entirely for a relationship outside the marriage. The judge glanced through a few images and shook her head. Incredible, she said, voice cool and stern. A $47,000 $47.40. Divorce party? Mr. Cole, the court considers the law and conduct. You violated both. Brianna dipped her head in thanks. I met her eyes. No words, only deep gratitude. Martin still grabbed for one last thread of hope. He stood, voice rough. "Your Honor, I'm unemployed. I lost my position after the incident. I request temporary spousal support from Mrs. Catherine because she has greater assets." A ripple moved through the courtroom. Brianna arched a brow and replied at once, "Your Honor, my client was financially independent before and after the marriage. Furthermore, under D.C. family law, Section 309, to receive support, the requesting party must show financial dependence or substantial contribution to the other party's career. Mr. Cole was not dependent and in fact misused Mrs. Catherine's assets without permission. Therefore, this request is baseless." The judge tapped the gavel lightly. Request for support denied. Martin sank into his seat, hand over his face. Lorraine turned away, eyes shut tight. After nearly 2 hours, Judge Rebecca Yates brought down the gavel. The District of Columbia hereby dissolves the marriage of Catherine Miller Cole and Martin Cole effective today. Separate property is recognized as a matter of law. The cabin and vehicle are split equally. All personal debts of Mr. Cole are his alone. The record will be filed publicly. The sound was dry and final, but to me, it rang like a bell of release. I squeezed Brianna's hand. She smiled the kind of smile that knows every step of the last 3 months, every document, every email, every meeting led to this moment. I whispered, "You stayed on target. Not a single arrow missed." "Not me," Brianna said. "You the one patient enough to see it through." That afternoon, the Washington Ledger ran a short piece on the Society page. Silver anniversary upset CEO Martin Cole loses home and job after what's being called the year's most stunning reversal. Hundreds of comments followed. One read, "Life turns fast. Never underestimate a quiet woman." Another said, "Catherine Miller should teach how to counterpunch with the law." I smiled, not gloating, just relieved. I screenshotted the article and filed it in a folder named Ending 2025. I closed my laptop and looked out the window. Autumn in Washington, stretched in amber. I thought, in the end, justice doesn't need to be loud, it only needs to be steady and on time. My story, a 25-year marriage ending in a courtroom, wasn't a tragedy, it was a wake-up bell. Even in silence, if we stand with the truth, the scales of justice eventually tip our way. I once heard someone say that the reckoning doesn't always come with a gavel strike, but with the days after when honor, money, and pride slip away from a person like the last leaves of the season. For Martin, that began just 2 weeks after the hearing. The video of him being exposed at the Willard had already spread online. A guest posted it on a personal account with a simple caption, "Husband announces divorce at an anniversary party and wife counters with proof of assets, inheritance, and an affair." Within 48 hours, the clip passed 4 million views. Entertainment feeds shared it with blazing headlines, "Silver Night Scandal," the anniversary upset that stunned Washington. Under every post were thousands of cutting laughs. A CEO who never read family law? Serves him right for belittling the woman he vowed to love. Catherine Miller, icon of clear-headed strength. I didn't watch it all. Once was enough to know every lie eventually finds daylight. 3 days later, I received a brief email from my boss, Victor Lang, who had witnessed that night. "Catherine, you should know the board voted unanimously to terminate Martin Cole's contract. No one wants the company tied to that kind of moral scandal. Rest assured, this isn't about you. He forfeited his credibility on his own." I replied, "Thank you, Victor." "That's fair enough." I deleted the message without another word. No joy, no gloating, just the feeling of closing an old notebook. In the months that followed, word trickled in from old friends. Martin tried to find work at a few small finance firms around Arlington, but no one hired him. Rumor traveled faster than resumes. The man who threw a $47,000 party to divorce his wife. No one wanted to be tied to that name. A few weeks later, he started driving a cab. Someone I knew saw him standing by a silver Toyota Camry at Union Station, waiting for fares. Old shirt, loosened tie, a gaunt face with hollow eyes, nothing like the executive who once strode across the Willards' polished floor with a mic in his hand. When I heard, I stayed quiet. There's no victory worth celebrating when the problem's person was once part of your life. But there is justice, and justice doesn't need an audience. Lorraine, the woman who once boasted, "My son has everything in hand," now tasted the rest of the plan she helped set in motion. I heard she had to sell her townhouse in Alexandria to cover the mortgage she'd used for legal fees and credit debt. She moved into a one-room apartment in the suburbs of Falls Church, far from the center, where the rent was cheaper but buses ran sparsely. A former neighbor said she still watered her orchids on the stoop each morning, but her face looked vacant, eyes like someone who still couldn't accept that the dream of a perfect son had turned to ash. As for Tessa, the woman who thought money could buy back all honor, she disappeared for a while after the scandal. By the fourth month, new photos popped up online, her in a white wedding dress, beaming beside a salt-and-pepper-haired man. The caption was brief. New life, new chapter. Her new husband owned a chain of upscale restaurants in Virginia Beach, nearly 20 years older but wealthy and well-known. The image spread quickly. Someone forwarded it to me with a note. Looks like she really found her new chapter. I glanced once and deleted it. All I felt was tired. If Tessa thinks she won, let her. Sometimes, emptiness is the greatest failure, one you don't recognize right away. Martin must have seen that photo. I knew because one evening I received a text from an unknown number. I saw her picture. "You won, Catherine." Everything slipped out of my hands. I read it, then set the phone down on the table. I didn't reply. 1 hour later, a second text came in. "I just want to meet to say I'm sorry. Just once." At the old spot. I looked at that line the way you look at an empty seashell, the thing that once held a sound, now just hollow. I didn't respond, and I didn't block him right away. I just left it there. Because silence is, sometimes, the deepest punishment. The next morning, I blocked the number, changed my email address, and set filters to block his name on every platform. I called Brianna and kept it short. "You once taught me that a boundary isn't a wall. It's a door locked from the inside." Today, I locked it. Brianna laughed over the phone. "And I believe you'll never open it again." A few weeks later, late in the afternoon, I ordered a car on an app to go to the office building and sign my early retirement papers. When the screen showed the driver's name, I froze. Martin C., silver Camry, a familiar plate. The photo was his face, thinner and older. Just for a moment then I hit cancel. A pop-up asked, "Are you sure you want to cancel?" I tapped yes without hesitation. Some rides aren't worth starting again even if it's only 15 minutes away. From that day on, I focused on the move to Miami. The condo I once called Plan B was now the real beginning. I spent a month handling paperwork, hiring movers, and donating most of my clothes and things to charity. The Capitol Hill condo was too big now, too full of memories. I didn't want to hear the old footsteps echo down the hall anymore. One morning, with May wind pouring through the window, I stood in the empty living room and watched sunbeams land on the bare wall where the wedding photo used to hang. I took down the last frame, wiped off the dust, and smiled. I didn't regret anything anymore. Not the 25 years, not the man who fell out of my life, not even the wounds because they taught me to stand up when it mattered. On the day I flew out, I carried just one suitcase and a folder of financial documents. In the air, as the plane left D, See, I looked out the window, the city shrinking, familiar buildings turning into faint dots of light. In that moment, I knew I was leaving not just a place, but a part of my life. When the plane landed in Miami, warm sun and sea air rushed in. I stepped out, lifted my face to a cloudless blue sky, and took a deep breath. A different sky, the sky of freedom. Mine was opening ahead. I thought, if someone asks me about Martin, Lorraine, or Tessa, I'll just smile. We all get the ending we deserve. Then I walked on, leaving the memories behind and welcoming a new life. Light as sea breeze, and bright as the first sunrise after a storm. If there was a moment when I truly felt born again, it was that first morning in Miami. When I opened the balcony door, warm wind rolled in, carrying the salt of the sea and the scent of white plumeria along the hall. Sunlight poured across the living room, laying a soft golden glow on the walls. Below, small waves lapped the sand, and far out the horizon lay clear like a silver mirror. I stood for a long time, listening to the waves and seabirds, and felt something spread through me, relief and pride all at once. I had reached the place that 3 months ago I'd only dared call Plan B. Now it was the plan for my real life. The new condo is on the 14th floor, facing the ocean, simple but bright inside. I chose everything myself. A white linen sofa, oak bookshelves, and a desk turned away from the window, so when I look up, I see the sea. I didn't buy a TV. I want to hear real life, the waves, the people doing yoga on the sand, the ring of bike bells from tourists drifting by. On the first day I moved in, I had only 2 suitcases, one for clothes, one for documents, and my laptop. I opened the laptop and wrote a short email to Victor Lang. Sir, I'm formally resigning. Thank you for the respect and support you gave me during the hardest time. I'm leaving not because I'm tired, but because I want to find joy and work on my own terms. Less than an hour later, he replied, Catherine, I understand, and I'm happy for you. Not many people start over at 55, but you're different. You're not running away. You're moving forward. Congratulations, and thank you for 25 years of service. I read his note and smiled. A chapter closed without bitterness, only gratitude. I spent a week reorganizing my finances. The inheritance from Zurich went into my personal account, split in 2. Half in a safe savings vehicle, and half for an old dream I'd set aside more than 20 years ago, opening a small publishing house. When I told Brianna, she laughed, thinking I was joking. You? Publishing? Yes, I said. Not to be famous. To translate and reprint good books Americans have forgotten. Old European works, beautiful translations, I want to keep them alive. Brianna was quiet for a few seconds, then said softly, Catherine, that isn't just a dream. That's a way to heal. 3 months later, Silverhouse Publishing, the name I chose, was officially licensed. I rented a small room on Collins Avenue, just a few blocks from the ocean. Inside, white walls and shelves lined with the first proof copies. I hired 5 young editors, 3 women, 2 men, faces full of hope, and the light I used to have right out of school. At our first meeting, I said, we don't need to be big. We just need to be honest with the words, careful with authors, and decent with readers. If each book we make is kept and not thrown away, it means we did it right. All 5 clapped. A young woman with soft purple hair said, hearing you, I feel calmer. No one talks about decency in this industry anymore. I smiled and answered lightly, then we'll be the first. On the day I signed our first licensing agreement, my hand trembled holding the pen. It was an English translation of La Porte Étroite, a French novel I read in college. When I saw the red stamp and the ISBN on the cover, my eyes stung. I once thought I was just a woman surviving, with nothing left to begin. But there was a part of me, the part that loves words and nuance, that never died. I snapped a photo of the first cover, and sent it to Brianna and Paige. Paige wrote back almost immediately, "You know, you look different. Brighter, lighter, like the wind blew away what weighed you down." I laughed reading it, then took a picture of the beach after work, late sun turning the water gold. With it, I wrote, "Paige, maybe it's because the only thing I'm afraid of losing now is myself." One evening, Brianna came to Miami for work and stopped by. We sat on the balcony with glasses of white wine. The wind carried salt air, waves blended with music from a nearby bar. Brianna studied me for a long time and said, "You know, Catherine, I once thought your revenge was too smart, too gentle. But now I get it. You didn't take revenge. You saved yourself." I stayed quiet, then smiled. "Yes, because revenge keeps you stuck in the past. Saving yourself lets you live." Brianna raised her glass and tapped mine. The sound rang like a sliver of glass, thin and clear enough to make my eyes water. Life settled into a new rhythm. Every morning, I woke at 6 a.m. and walked the beach in my old sneakers. Waves licked the sand, cold but gentle. Seniors did Tai Chi. Kids laughed, chasing kites. Each breath tasted of salt. Each step carried me farther from the old darkness. When the sun lifted off the water, I told myself, no more fear. No more pretending to be at peace. I felt a quiet joy inside, like knowing every note of a song without words. One Saturday morning, as I came home, the building manager called out, "Mrs. Catherine, you have a letter." I was surprised few people write by hand anymore. A beige envelope, slanted handwriting I knew. In the corner, "Sender Martin Cole." I held it for a long moment. Inside would be apologies or late regrets. I knew what waited there, but I didn't need to hear it. I opened a drawer, took out a freshly printed book, and slipped the letter between 2 pages, unread, untorn. I just pressed it closed and set it on the shelf. That letter would sit there as a marker, not to remember, but to remind me I had passed through it all. That afternoon I sat on the balcony, wind in my hair, holding a cup of black coffee. The sea stretched endless, sunlight breaking into 1,000 silver ribbons. Children's laughter rose from the sand. Gulls circled the rooflines. Far off, the sun tilted toward the horizon like a gentle blessing. I lifted my cup and said to myself, "Freedom tastes salty like the sea, but sweet like forgiveness." Then I took a sip, breathed deep, let the wind touch my skin and the sun brush my eyelids. I don't know what lies ahead, but for the first time in 25 years, I don't need to predict it. I just need to live, really live. And when night fell, I cracked the window and listened to the steady surf like a lullaby from a city that had opened its arms to me, whispering, "Welcome home, Catherine." In December, I returned to D.C. After nearly a year away. The city was the same, only I had changed. I wasn't the woman with her head bowed in the Willards ballroom anymore. I was Catherine, who had learned to walk on her own. The trip lasted only 3 days, enough to finish what was unfinished. I signed away my remaining share of the Virginia cabin. I felt no regret. That place had once stood for the marriage years, but now it was just a door to close so another could open. After leaving the notary's office, I stopped by Mr. Whitman's, the elderly attorney who helped me find my first legal shield. He welcomed me with a kind smile, his silver hair bright under the light. "I heard you moved to Miami," he said, pouring tea. "The ocean must suit you better than D.C. winters, right?" I smiled and set my first book on his desk, turquoise cover, the words, "The Narrow Door," translated by Catherine Miller. "I want you to have this," I said. "Without you, I would have fallen before I could begin again." He turned a few pages and smiled slowly. "You didn't fall, you just paused to choose the right direction." I hugged him goodbye. Sometimes gratitude doesn't need much, just a squeeze of the hand to tie gentle threads between people. That afternoon, I met Brianna at our old cafe near Lafayette Square. She was a few minutes late, still in a neat black suit, but her face was softer. "I'll transfer your legal fees," I said. Brianna arched a brow. "Don't joke, Catherine. Friends don't bill friends. If you want to thank me, buy me a slice of key lime pie in Miami next time." We both laughed. In that laughter I realized, not everyone leaves when you fall. Some stand there, pull you up, and walk with you out of the dark. Back in Miami, I wrote the foreword to Silver House's first anthology. Truth always wins. It just needs time to arrive. And when it does, it isn't loud. It simply stands there, shining in the quiet. I reread it many times. It wasn't only for readers, it was for me too. I had lost everything to learn that justice is sometimes patience in silence. One morning, my phone rang an unknown number with a D.C. area code. I hesitated, then picked up. Lorraine's voice came through, hoarse and weak. "Catherine, I don't expect your forgiveness, but I need to say this. I was wrong. I was blind. I thought I was protecting my son, but I was destroying him. Thank you for not making us your enemies." I went quiet for a few seconds. Then I spoke gently, one word at a time. "You don't need to apologize. I forgive you, but I'm not going back." Silence on the other end. Only wind. I knew she was crying. And strangely, I felt no bitterness, only pity for both of us. Forgiveness isn't to forget. It's to let your heart be at peace. That night, Miami was calm. Music from the bar across the street mixed with the sound of the surf. I sat on the balcony, my wine glass catching the warm light. No more anger at anyone, no more resentment at anything. I felt full, a peace that didn't come from money or status, but from knowing I had lived in the right. A month later, I was invited to share my story at a small talk for a women's reading group. About 20 people, most middle-aged women, sat around a candlelit table. I told my story not as a speech, but as a letter to those who had been hurt. Near the end, a silver-haired woman stood, voice trembling. "Miss Catherine, do you regret those 25 years?" I smiled and looked around the warm room. "No, because I learned my worth, and that's worth more than everything," she cried. She came closer, gripped my hand and whispered, "Thank you for speaking for us." In that moment, I understood my story wasn't just my ending. It was a beginning for those who need faith to stand up. When everyone left, I stepped onto the balcony and looked at the ocean. The night sea glittered like 1,000 shards of mirrored glass reflecting the moon. I thought, every wave is a new beginning, arriving, breaking, and fading, but never truly gone. I murmured, "Catherine Miller, you've come full circle to return to yourself." And as the sea wind moved through my hair, I knew there was nothing left to prove. If my story touched you, tell me where you're listening from. I truly want to know if someone out there has stood at the same crossroads of hurt and freedom as I did. Leave a comment and tell me what you would do in my place. Would you stay silent or speak up? And if you want to keep walking with stories about self-respect, justice, and faith later in life, you can subscribe, like, or share, so I know you're here with me on this road. A small tap from you is a big push for me to write more stories, not just mine, but for everyone who had to learn how to love themselves again. Thank you for staying to the end to listen, to understand, and to believe that every ending is another beginning, if we're brave enough to keep going.
"You can't sit with us. Mommy said you're just a useless old freeloader." My 9-year-old granddaughter Lily said that in front of the entire family, right in the middle of my son Michael's birthday dinner. What hit me wasn't the insult itself, but the sound of my own child laughing at it. I stood up, trying to keep my back straight, even as my chest tightened like someone was squeezing it. No one apologized. No one stopped her. That night, Michael texted me a single sentence. "Mom, tomorrow is the usual payment deadline." And I replied, "Handle it yourself." They didn't know that, from that moment on, I had opened the door to the biggest reversal of their lives. If you're still listening, tell me where you're watching from. Every comment you leave is another mark in this journey. And if this story has touched you, don't forget to hit like, so it can reach even further. My name is Evelyn Brooks. I'm 66 years old and live in a quiet little town in Oregon. My white wooden house with the wide front porch is where I raised my 2 boys and where I once imagined I would grow old peacefully, surrounded by the laughter of family. But it turns out everything I spent my whole life building could collapse in an instant created by the very people I loved most. That day was Michael's 41st birthday. The little blonde boy I once carried is now a grown man with a wife, a child, and a family I always thought I still belonged to. I had woken up at 6 a.m. to prepare the dinner. I roasted honey-glazed chicken, Michael's childhood favorite, made coleslaw, and baked a red velvet cake using the exact recipe he once said was the best in America. I cleaned every corner of my kitchen, polished the silverware, and laid out a navy blue tablecloth, his favorite color since high school. I poured my whole heart into that meal, not because I wanted gratitude, but because I loved my son, loved this family so much that I sometimes forgot I also deserved respect. At exactly 3 p.m., Michael and Vanessa's shiny black SUV pulled into my driveway. I smiled, my heart fluttering with a fragile hope that maybe today would feel warm, like the old days. But the first person to step out, Vanessa, my daughter-in-law, shattered that hope immediately. She lowered her sunglasses, scanned my house like she was assessing a free temporary shelter. "Oh, wow, you actually cleaned today," she said, her voice cold even though her lips curved into a polite smile. I simply replied, "I always keep the house clean. You just don't notice." Vanessa didn't care. She walked inside as if entering a convenience store, eyes glued to her phone, leaving Michael to carry everything. Lily, only 9, walked in last, shaking her brown curls and giving me a look no child should have, unless someone taught her to. I bent down and opened my arms. "Hi, Lily, sweetheart, come give Grandma a hug." She stepped back half a step, wrinkling her nose as if I had offered her something dirty. I swallowed that sharp, stinging feeling in my chest and stood up. "It's okay," I told myself. "Kids can be unpredictable." But I was wrong. I was naive to the point of foolishness. When we sat down at the table, Vanessa crossed her legs like a queen, not lifting a finger to help. Michael looked at his phone more than he looked at me. The only sound was the faint clinking of silverware in my warm, quiet kitchen. I tried to start a conversation. "Lily, how's school? Grandma misses you." Without looking up, she replied, "Mommy says Grandma asks too many questions." I heard Vanessa chuckle, and Michael gave an awkward, embarrassed smile, but said nothing. He didn't correct his daughter. He didn't ask his wife to be respectful, not one word. When I brought out the red velvet cake, candles glowing on top, I hoped the atmosphere would soften. I thought the moment of blowing out candles might spark some warmth. I thought my son would look at me the way he used to, as the woman who tucked him into bed every night. I thought wrong again. Just as I sat down to join them in singing, Lily suddenly stood up, turned to me, and said clearly, "You can't sit with us. Mommy said you're just a useless old freeloader." The cake nearly slipped from my hands. Vanessa burst out laughing. But what tore me apart was Michael's quiet laugh, the one I would hear again in my sleep for nights afterward. The room spun. I stood up slowly so I wouldn't collapse. Good, I told myself. Don't cry in front of them. Don't let them see you hurt. I walked into the kitchen. Before the door even swung shut, I heard them go right back to laughing, talking, as if they hadn't just shattered someone's heart in the same room. I leaned against the sink, my hands gripping the edge until my knuckles turned white. On the wall, there was a photo of Michael at 4 years old, smiling brightly in his little beach outfit. I stared at that picture and wondered when my son had become a stranger. That night, after everyone left, I cleaned each plate smeared with frosting, each glass with their fingerprints on it. My house went quiet again, the kind of quiet that makes an older woman feel alone. My phone buzzed. Michael. Mom, tomorrow is the usual payment deadline. The usual payment, meaning the money I had quietly wired into his account every month for 3 years, so he could keep up appearances with Vanessa, so his family never lacked anything, so Lily could attend private school, so Vanessa could carry a new designer handbag every season. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed 3 words, handle it yourself. And for the first time in 15 years as a single mother, I felt peaceful. Not because I saw my future, but because I finally saw theirs. I, Evelyn Brooks, had lived my whole life for my children. I once believed that's what a mother must do, but that birthday dinner woke me up. Love is not meant to be stepped on. I turned off the living room lights and walked up the creaky stairs to my bedroom. Each step echoed softly like the sound of a chapter closing. No one knew that as I sat by my window looking out at my winter garden, I was already thinking one thing. If they see me as a burden, then let's see how long they last without that burden. And I made a silent promise to myself. They would have to relearn their entire lives from the very lesson they began with ungratefulness. I didn't know that night that this small decision would trigger a domino effect, shaking the entire family, toppling illusions, revealing truths even I never expected. But I knew one thing for certain. That day was the day I stopped being dismissed and started reclaiming my life. The next morning, I woke just as the first light hit the pine trees behind my yard. I still heard Lily calling me a freeloader in my head, but strangely, the sting had hardened into something like a thin sheet of ice, cold but strong, protective. I put on my sweater, went downstairs, brewed my black coffee, and sat at my usual spot by the window, the place where every morning I watched the world move slowly. But that morning, the world didn't move slowly at all. My phone buzzed nonstop, tearing right through the quiet. I knew who it was, but I let it ring. Once, twice, 3 times. On the 5th call, I finally answered. Michael's voice exploded through the line, shaky and frantic. Mom, why is my account negative? The bank says I'm short almost $3,000. Vanessa's car won't take gas. Her card got declined. Mom, what's happening? I took a sip of coffee, watching the steam drift across the window. Oh, are you sure you called the right person? I'm just the useless old freeloader. What do I have to do with this? Michael went silent. I heard his breathing quicken. Then, from somewhere behind him, a sharp shout. Michael, you said your mom put money on my card. They declined it. I had to leave my coffee. It was Vanessa, sharp, shrill, panicked. I smiled faintly. I had never been this calm. You heard her, I said gently. A burden has no financial obligations. Mom, this isn't funny. The house payment is due. Bills are piling up. Oh, the house? I interrupted. The one I paid 80% of the down payment for? A gulp. Footsteps. Maybe he was walking to a quieter corner. Mom, what are you saying? You paid for us? I walked to my wooden cabinet, took out a red folder, and set it on the table. Michael, do you know what I've been paying for these past 3 years? I pulled out each document, reading them like a grocery list. The mortgage, the cars, insurance, Lily's private school tuition, both of your credit cards, roof repairs, summer camp, your Colorado trip last year. The line went dead silent. I did all that because I love you, because I didn't want Vanessa to look down on you, but I see now I was completely wrong. Michael stammered. Mom, why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say anything? Why should I? You're a grown man, Michael. You have a family, responsibilities. I thought helping a little would give you confidence. I paused. Turns out I only fed a habit. Just then, Vanessa grabbed the phone. Lily is just a kid. She didn't mean it. Why are you blowing this up? I laughed, a short, sharp laugh. Kids repeat what they hear. Children don't come up with insults for their grandmothers on their own. Vanessa went silent immediately. I continued. Do you know why Lily spoke that way, Vanessa? Because she heard it at home, because you said it, because Michael didn't correct you. I don't blame Lily, but I will not tolerate the disrespect of adults. Michael's voice returned, desperate. Mom, the bank is really going to take the house. I need you to... No, Michael. This time, my voice was stone. Yesterday, you watched your daughter insult me. You laughed. When a mother is treated that way, no one has the right to ask her for anything. I heard him choke, a small, broken sound. I placed the papers down and flipped to the printed statements. These are all the payments I made. You can come see them anytime, but listen carefully. From today on, I'm not paying a single cent more. You and Vanessa have 24 hours to do one simple thing: apologize properly. If not, all support ends permanently. On the other end, I heard Vanessa cry, not in remorse, but in fear of losing her lifestyle. Michael sounded like the weight of the sky had fallen on him. Mom, you can't do this. I can't fix this on my own. Michael, I said softly yet firmly, I fixed everything my whole life. Now it's your turn. I paused, letting the next words land. If you see me as a burden, then you must learn to live without that burden. A long silence followed, then a slammed door, a yell, Michael calling after her. I breathed in slowly. My kitchen glowed with soft morning light. My coffee was still warm. For the first time, I felt free. My pain hadn't vanished, but it had hardened into resolve, into steel. For 3 years, I supported a family that never thanked me. I protected Michael's pride. I let them build an image of me as an endless resource. That ended this morning. I set down my cup and closed the folder. Sometimes, to stand firm, an older woman doesn't need anyone behind her. She just needs to say enough. And that morning, for the first time in 66 years, I did. Michael called 2 more times, but I didn't answer. They needed time to face themselves, to understand that everything in life has a price, including a mother's kindness. And in that silence, something became incredibly clear. I owed them nothing, but they owed me an apology I would never forget if it didn't come. I clicked the folder shut, a soft, decisive sound, like a door closing, and another one opening. A door leading to a confrontation they never imagined I had the strength to walk into. I didn't have to wait long. Just before noon the next day, the sound of a car slamming its brakes echoed across my yard, sharp and dry like a warning. I pulled the curtain aside and looked out the window. Michael stepped out of the driver's seat, exhausted, his clothes wrinkled, his hair flat and oily like someone who hadn't slept all night. But Vanessa was different. She stomped her high heels on the tile steps of my porch, pushed open my front door without even knocking, as if this place belonged to her. "We need to talk," Vanessa said, her voice sharp as a thin blade. Michael stood behind her, avoiding my eyes. I didn't invite them to sit right away. I wanted to see how they intended to begin this conversation, but clearly, apology wasn't in their vocabulary. Vanessa crossed her arms, tilted her head with challenge. "You cut off the money without warning. That's unreasonable. I want to know why." I raised an eyebrow, swallowing a sigh. "Why? You two don't see the reason." Michael awkwardly sat down on the sofa, while Vanessa remained standing as if she needed the higher position to protect her crumbling ego. "Mom," Michael said quietly, "we really need you to explain. Suddenly all the payments stopped. I can't handle—" I cut him off. "You said suddenly? Michael, you don't remember what happened last night?" Vanessa let out a mocking laugh. "If you did this to prove you have power, it didn't work. We're not scared." I looked straight at her. "Oh, then who's handling the frozen credit cards? Who's paying this month's mortgage? Lily's tuition that's waiting for a signature? Your SUV running out of gas on the road? Who's filling the tank?" The confidence on Vanessa's face cracked. She shot Michael a look as if blaming him. I quietly pulled the red folder from the dining table and placed it in front of them. A solid thump filled the room. "Good. Let me help you explain." I opened the folder. On the table were detailed statements of every expense from the past 3 years. Receipts, bank transfers, tuition bills, car insurance, home repairs, even the receipt for the leather jacket Vanessa bragged about on Instagram. I pushed a stack of papers toward them. "From the milk Lily drinks every week to your Colorado trip, all of it. I paid." Michael reached out with shaking hands to pick up a sheet. Vanessa froze in place, her skin turning visibly pale. She tried to force a weak smile. "This must be some misunderstanding. Michael never said you paid." "Yes," I said evenly, because Michael was ashamed. "My son has been lying to you for 3 years." Michael quickly shook his head, then dropped his hands, as if he no longer had the strength to deny it. "Vanessa, I didn't have a choice. I just wanted you to think I was capable. I was afraid, if you knew—" "What does that mean?" Vanessa burst out, turning to me. "Lily is just a kid. She talks nonsense. Don't use a child's words to make things difficult for us." I leaned back in my chair, watching her for a long moment. Children repeat what adults teach. She didn't come up with the phrase, "useless old freeloader," on her own. You might forget that kids hear more than adults think. Vanessa went silent. Her face shifted into an odd shade of red, part anger, part shame, part fear. I took a soft breath and said clearly, "You two said you needed to talk, so do I. First, bring Lily in here." Immediately, Vanessa reacted as if touched on an open wound. "No, she's not involved. She's sitting in the car. Whatever you want to say it to us." I knew exactly what she was afraid of, that her daughter's own words would expose the attitude she had been hiding. "Vanessa," I said, my voice light but sharp, "a child only repeats how their parents treat others. If we don't talk to Lily now, she'll grow up thinking it's normal to insult her grandparents." She clenched her teeth. "I'm not letting you brainwash my daughter." Michael raised a hand as if to calm both sides. "Mom, I'm sorry. I was wrong. I shouldn't have laughed. I shouldn't have stayed quiet. No, Michael." I looked straight at my son. "You didn't just laugh. You allowed all of it. You let your daughter believe cruelty is acceptable. You taught her that through your silence." Michael lowered his head, his shoulders collapsing as if years of weight had fallen onto him all at once. Vanessa crossed her arms and lifted her chin. "Fine. If you want us to apologize to get the money back, we're not doing it. We can handle things ourselves. We don't need your charity." "Oh?" I tilted my head, unable to hide my smile. "Handle things? Vanessa, do you know how much is left in Michael's account right now? $37. Your credit card is 2 cycles overdue. Your car loan has the highest interest rate tier. The bank is about to send a second foreclosure notice. How exactly do you plan to handle this?" Her face flamed red. "We'll manage. I can get a better job. I'm not dependent on anyone." I looked directly into her proud eyes and said softly, "Vanessa, you've been dependent on me for 3 years without knowing it. And the worst part is, you thought you were above everyone else." Michael rubbed his forehead, his voice breaking. "Mom, I'm sorry, it's my fault. I wanted to look strong, to be the provider. I didn't think it would turn into this. I just wanted Vanessa to be proud of me." I placed one hand on the table, staying silent for a few seconds before speaking. "If you want respect, you must live like someone worthy of it. You can't build love on my money." I pushed the folder toward them. "Now here is my final choice. 24 hours. Either you apologize to me, clearly, sincerely, without excuses, or you two handle everything on your own starting today." Vanessa shot to her feet. "I don't need that kind of money. I will take care of my family. I won't let you control us." She grabbed Michael's hand. "Let's go. We'll show her we don't rely on anyone." But her steps trembled, and Michael looked like a rope pulled from both ends, between his wife's pride and the truth he couldn't outrun. When the door slammed shut, my house fell silent. Only the wind rustled through the trees outside. I sat down, resting my hands in my lap, letting my breath settle. No more hurt, no more humiliation, just one strange feeling, the feeling of someone who had restored order. I knew Vanessa wouldn't let go of her pride easily, and Michael was sinking into the dark space between shame and fear of losing everything. But I also knew one certain thing. This storm was only beginning. Some winds can only be understood when they rip the roof off someone's house. And for Michael and Vanessa, that roof had never been more fragile. That afternoon, as the sunlight fell behind the pine trees, my phone rang again. But this time, it wasn't Michael's frantic calls. On the screen was a name that softened something inside me. Jonathan. My younger son living in Seattle, almost a 4-hour flight away. Jonathan had always been the grounded one. Quiet but thoughtful, and most importantly, he had always treated me with the kind of kindness that didn't need to be shown off. I answered, "Mom?" His voice was low, touched with concern. "What happened with Michael? He called me past midnight, crying. I've never heard him like that." I closed my eyes and exhaled. I had prepared myself to retell the story, but hearing Jonathan ask with genuine care made the ache inside me stir again, like a wound brushed too soon. "Do you want to hear both sides or the truth?" I asked, trying to keep my tone steady. Jonathan didn't hesitate. "I always want the truth from you." So I told him. Everything. From Lily's insult, Michael's laugh, the entire family walking away without realizing how deeply they had cut me. I told him about the usual payment text, about Vanessa barging into my house as if I owed them answers. I told him how neither of them apologized, only demanded to know why I had unreasonably cut the money. Silence stretched across the line. Then Jonathan spoke, slow and measured. "Mom, I really don't know what to say. I had no idea Lily said that. But what Michael did, I'm so disappointed. His voice tightened. I don't blame you for cutting support. Honestly, I think you should have done it a long time ago. I gave a faint, sad smile. I know, but I always thought Michael needed time, needed the feeling of being supported to stand tall. That's not what happened, Mom, Jonathan said immediately. He relied on you to maintain an image for his wife. He relied on you to build a life he didn't earn. It's not support anymore. It's dependency. I went still. Hearing my own son say it plainly made me face a truth I had avoided for years. Jonathan continued, "To be honest, Michael needs this shock to grow up, and you need the distance so you're not taken advantage of anymore." That sentence was like a light turning on inside me. "Jonathan, if Michael calls to borrow money, what would you do?" I asked, partly curious, partly needing to know if I could trust at least one son completely. Without a second thought, Jonathan replied, "I won't give him any. Doing that would just enable him, and I won't be part of hurting you more." Maybe I had been waiting years to hear someone in my family say that. I leaned back in my chair, looking out at the front yard, where the first yellow leaves of the season had begun to fall. "Thank you," I said softly, "not because you're taking my side, but because you see something I took too long to see." Jonathan's voice gentled. "Mom, you never asked for anything except respect. If someone can't give you that, they don't deserve your help." A warm wave swept through my chest. "If Michael needs emotional support, I'll still be here," I said. "But no more financial help, no more carrying everything while they sit back." Jonathan exhaled, as if releasing something he had been holding. "I support you completely. And, Mom, don't soften your heart again. You've been through enough." I let out a light laugh. "You're afraid I'll soften?" "Mom," Jonathan chuckled, "for the past 30 years, you've never understood the meaning of the word harsh. But sometimes, setting boundaries is the healthiest way to love." I stayed quiet, not because I was hurt, but because my son had just spoken straight into a part of me I didn't know anyone understood. "Don't worry," I said. "This time, I'm not stepping back." After I hung up, I sat for a long time, listening to the ticking clock in the living room. For the first time in days, I didn't feel alone in this battle. At least one of my sons was truly grown, balanced, thoughtful, and capable of love that didn't bleed others dry. I began rethinking everything. The years I spent trying to shield Michael, not realizing I was weakening him. I realized this family didn't just need a small wake-up call. They needed an upheaval, and cutting financial support was only the first stone dropped into the water. That evening, after a simple dinner of chicken soup and toasted bread, I went upstairs and opened the wooden cabinet my late husband left behind. Inside were old folders, business plans from 20 years ago, documents I had intended to organize many times but couldn't because the memories felt too heavy. I pulled out each folder: savings accounts, shares of the small real estate company my husband and I started when Michael was just out of college, papers I had never shown either of my sons because I had wanted them to stand on their own feet. But now I needed to review everything, not to help Michael or Vanessa, but to prepare the next step for myself. I sorted through each sheet, placing them back in order, feeling as though I was reorganizing my life, a life I had let others steer for far too long. When the night breeze drifted in through the window, rustling the curtains, I paused and looked out at the small forest behind my house, and I understood. For the first time in years, I was reclaiming control, Not control over anyone else, but control over my own life. Something age often tricks people into believing they've lost. I closed the last folder and rested my hand on its cover. I could feel it clearly. I was stepping into a new chapter, not with a broken heart, but with strength forged from the very wounds that once cut me. Because sometimes, the people who hurt us the most are the ones who unintentionally give us the greatest gift, awakening. The next morning, a little after 8 a.m., I received a video call from Michael. But before I could pick up, the call ended. Not even 10 seconds later, my phone rang again. I knew this pattern. This was how my son called when he was truly panicking. I pressed accept. Michael's face appeared on the screen, gaunt, eyes red as if he had been crying or hadn't slept all night. "Mom!" His voice broke. "Vanessa, she left." I didn't act surprised. I set my tea down, kept my voice steady. "Tell me more clearly." Michael swallowed hard, as if his throat were filled with gravel. "Vanessa found out my real salary." He let out a strained laugh, a painful, defeated sound. "Turns out I only make enough to cover electricity, water, and some groceries. The moment you stopped helping, everything fell apart." I stayed quiet, not out of judgment, but because I wanted him to see his own reality with his own eyes. Michael continued, his voice trembling. "She said straight to my face, she didn't get married to live with a failure." Those words stabbed into my ears, even though they weren't aimed at me. I knew that kind of pain, when someone you once trusted sees you as less than your true worth. I sighed softly. "Where is Vanessa now?" "She packed her things last night, took her whole wardrobe, makeup, even the travel suitcase, then pulled Lily along. They're staying at her parents' house." His voice cracked. "Lily? She cried, but Vanessa said it was temporary, until I can prove I can provide." I closed my eyes, feeling my heart squeezed gently by an old, tired hand. Loving your child is instinct, but love doesn't mean rescuing. Michael collapsed into a chair, hands on his head. "Mom, I lost my family." It was probably the first time in my life I had seen my son so bare. No pride, no bravado, no illusions of success. Just a 42-year-old man standing in the ruins he played a part in building. I kept my tone calm, but never cold. "Michael, sometimes the truth itself will choose who deserves to stay." He looked up, eyes pleading for someone to pull him out of the hole he had fallen into. "What do you mean, Mom?" I said slowly, the people who stay when you have nothing are the people who are truly your family." Michael went silent for a long time. His breathing blended into the hum of the ceiling fan behind him. Then he spoke, voice breaking like a defeated child. "All this time, I really thought Vanessa loved me." "You were mistaken," I replied gently, but without avoiding the truth. "Vanessa loved the lifestyle she thought you had." Michael clenched his fists, lips trembling. "I created that illusion so I wouldn't be looked down on, so I could keep my family together." I looked straight into his eyes, not to scold, but to show him what I had seen long before he did. "You can't keep a family together with borrowed money or the money I sent in secret. All you did was delay the moment they saw who you really are." Those words made Michael drop his gaze, his shoulders shaking. I didn't step forward to comfort him. I knew he had to go through this moment, had to feel the full weight of loss if he ever wanted to stand back up. After a long pause, he whispered, "Mom, all of this happened because I depended on you for too long, didn't it?" I pressed my lips together. Yes. But it wasn't just you. Part of it was my fault, too. I tried to shield you too much, afraid you would stumble. He looked up, confused and wounded. Mom, but that ends now, I said firmly. From now on, you have to live your life. If there are mistakes to fix, you fix them with your own 2 hands. Michael froze like a statue. That afternoon, I received another message from him. Mom, the house has nothing. I've never paid a full month of bills myself. The electric bill, the internet bill, the Honda that needed gas using Vanessa's card, which was now frozen, Lily needing lunch money for school, the fridge containing only a carton of milk that had expired 2 days ago. I read each line, and my heart tightened. But instead of rushing in to save him, I replied with one sentence. This is the first time you're living according to your real income. Consider it your starting point. 10 minutes later, Michael called again. Mom, I'm so scared. I answered with the low, steady voice of a woman who had lived long enough to understand pain and strength. Fear isn't shameful. Avoiding responsibility is. On the other end, Michael exhaled heavily. I'll try. I don't want to be the person Vanessa described. Then prove the opposite, I said. Start by paying your own bills. I heard him flipping through messy papers. Mom, there are too many. I don't know which ones to prioritize. Electricity, water, food. If you can't pay the mortgage on time, call the bank and negotiate. Everything else, cut back. You don't need to live like before anymore. Michael was silent for a long moment before asking, voice small like a child waking from a nightmare, Mom, will Vanessa come back? I answered truthfully, without adding false hope. If she loves you, she will. If she loves money, she won't. There are sentences that help people survive pain by touching the deepest part of it. That was one of them. That night, Michael sent the first screenshot of a bill he had paid himself. On the screen were the words, "Payment successful." For the first time in years, my son had done it on his own. I stared at the screen for a long moment, feeling as if I were watching a child take his first steps after refusing to walk for years. I only replied briefly, "Good job." No coddling, no exaggerated praise. Michael needed to learn that independence was normal, not a heroic achievement to be rewarded. In the following days, I watched his life from a distance. A house once full of noise now stood quiet. No more clicking heels from Vanessa, no more expensive perfume lingering in the hallway, no more Lily arguing with friends on the brand new iPad I had once financed. In that emptiness, I saw my son truly growing, slowly, painfully, but undeniably. I understood one thing clearly. Breaking the dependencies I had accidentally created over the past 3 years would not be easy, but it had to be done. And the collapse of Michael's marriage was simply the inevitable consequence. Vanessa never loved Michael. She loved the income she believed he had. She loved the new car I bought. She loved the big house I paid for. She loved the generosity she assumed came from her husband. Now everything was exposed. Now the truth stood between them like a mirror no one could avoid. And I would no longer interfere. Sometimes being a mother isn't about catching your child. Sometimes being a mother means letting your son fall, so he learns how to stand on his own trembling legs. That weekend, Michael came to my house no longer in total collapse. He still looked tired, but there was a spark of life in his eyes, as if he had finally taken a full breath after years of suffocating himself. "Mom," he began as I poured tea, "I think you're right. Maybe I've never really grown up." I looked at my son, truly looked at him, for the first time without the mask he always wore. No pretending to be strong, no chasing an image of success he had invented. I gently placed my hand on his shoulder. "You're beginning now, Michael, and I'm proud of you. Not because you're perfect, but because you're willing to face yourself." He lowered his head. "I'll do my best." I smiled. "Then this is only the first chapter of your new life." I invited Michael over on a quiet Sunday morning. Outside, red maple leaves dropped one by one, sounding like soft whispers of autumn. I stood in the kitchen making coffee, feeling an unusual calm. I knew the conversation about to happen would change the course of my son's life, and it was also a key step in the plan I had been quietly preparing for days. When Michael arrived, he knocked very gently as if afraid to disturb me, a hesitance I rarely saw in him. "Mom, I'm here," he said as he stepped inside, hands in his pockets, walking like a man who had just come out of a storm. I pointed to the old wooden table near the window, where I had placed a green folder, clipped with a bright brass fastener. "Sit down, Michael. I have something to give you." He looked at the folder as if it were a foreign object. "What is it, Mom?" "Open it." Michael slowly unfastened the clip. His eyes moved across the first page, then suddenly widened as if someone had pulled his hair. "Contract of employment, Brooks and Avery Real Estate Group." He looked up, mouth slightly open but unable to speak. I nodded. "That is your father's and my company." Michael froze. "But Dad was just a lumber mill worker?" I saw the innocence in his question. The truth was, my husband and I had hidden that secret well for 2 decades, not to deceive our children, but to protect them from growing up dependent on family wealth. "Your father worked at the mill until 2003, I explained slowly. "After that, he quit and focused on Brooks and Avery. We bought inexpensive lots during the recession, renovated old houses, rented them out, resold them, and kept building." Michael inhaled deeply, trying to process what he had just heard. I never knew." "That's right," I said, "because your father wanted you and Jonathan to build your own lives, not rely on inherited money, and I believed in that too." I rotated the folder toward him so he could see clearly. "You're 42 now. It's time you knew the truth." Michael looked down at the second page, a job description, Regional Property Manager, Western Division. Starting salary, a 6-figure number I knew he had never imagined. "Mom, why would you trust me with this, after everything I just put you through?" His voice shook, tangled with regret and disbelief. I didn't answer immediately. I looked at my son, a man walking into midlife with mistakes piled high like mountains, yet with a faint flicker of something still alive in his eyes, like a small ember refusing to die. "Michael," I finally said, "I'm not giving you this opportunity because you deserve it now, but because I believe you can become someone who deserves it later." He lowered his head, overwhelmed. "Mom, I don't even know how to thank you." But I lifted my hand to stop him. "This opportunity comes with a condition." Michael tensed. "What condition?" I folded my hands. On the table, my voice firm. "Vanessa is not to know." A deep silence sank into the room. Michael blinked, clearly stunned. "She can't know? But why?" I looked straight into his eyes. "Because I want to know the truth. I want to know whether your wife is with you because she loves you, or because she loves the lifestyle you pretended to have. If Vanessa comes back thinking you only earn your old salary, you will know how real her feelings are." Michael sat still like a statue. Then he reluctantly nodded. "Mom, I understand." "Good. This is a test for both of you, yourself and your wife, and I will not interfere." I pulled another sheet of paper from the folder and pushed it toward him. This contract clearly states your responsibilities, your benefits, and the termination clause if you fail to perform. Michael read through it, then straightened his back like someone who had just regained a long-lost sense of pride. "If I don't do well," he began. "Then there will be no second chance," I continued. "I already told you. This is your last opportunity." Michael drew a long breath, lowering his head, his eyes filled with a rare determination. "Mom, I won't disappoint you again." I looked at my son and felt as if time were looping. I saw my husband's shadow behind him, the man who always believed Michael had great potential, only he had never stepped off the safety chair others placed beneath him. Perhaps if he were still alive, he would have given our son this chance too. Michael stood up, holding the folder to his chest like he was carrying a priceless gift. His voice softened, but was filled with gratitude. "Mom, thank you for still believing in me, even when I don't believe in myself." I smiled gently, though inside me was an ocean of emotion. From now on, let your actions answer everything. I will no longer hold you up. Build your own life, Michael. He nodded, firmer than ever before. I watched him as he walked toward the door, his shoulders still heavy, but his steps carrying the strength of a man who finally understood his responsibility. When the door closed softly behind him, I stood up, walked to the window, and watched his figure disappear behind the maple trees. A cold breeze swept past, lifting a few yellow leaves into the air. I knew clearly I had just set the key gear of my plan into the correct position. Michael would grow up, Vanessa would show her true nature, and my family, after years tangled like a ball of yarn, would finally reveal who truly belonged to one another. I whispered to myself, a small promise to the husband I lost. He's about to step into a new chapter, Richard. This time he has to stand on his own 2 feet. Michael left my house with determined eyes, but I knew another battlefield awaited him. Not the new job, but the confrontation with his own marriage. I didn't interfere. I simply sat by the window, watching his silhouette fade behind the trees, my fingers tightening around the cooling cup of tea. A mother must sometimes step back to see clearly who walks out of her child's life, and who clings on only for personal gain. By late afternoon, as the sky shifted into deep blue, Michael texted me, "I'm going to Vanessa's parents' house. I want to tell them about the job." I replied with just one sentence, "Tell the truth." From what Michael later described, I could picture the scene inside Vanessa's parents' grand home, a suburban mansion where everything appeared more glamorous than it truly was. Vanessa had always bragged about her stable background, using it as a shield to belittle my family. Michael stood in the large foyer. Vanessa sat cross-legged on the sofa, her phone vibrating nonstop with social media notifications. She looked up, and the moment she saw Michael, she frowned. "What are you doing here?" Vanessa's voice was sharp as a blade. Michael took a deep breath. "I have news about my job." Vanessa immediately sat upright. "A new job? Good, tell me. How much is the salary?" Not how is the job, not are you doing okay, just how much is the salary? Michael said that in that moment he realized this question had repeated itself for 10 years of marriage. He had simply never heard it clearly before. "I was appointed regional manager. The salary." He swallowed. "The starting salary is..." "How much?" Vanessa cut him off, her voice harsh like someone gasping for air. "It's an amount enough for us to live comfortably, not rich but stable." "Say the number." Michael finally had to read the figure aloud, a relatively high salary for any middle-class man, But when Vanessa heard it, she shot up as if someone had slapped her. "Not enough!" Her scream echoed from the living room to the backyard. Michael froze. "Vanessa, this is my real salary. It's a job I have to work hard for." "Not enough for me to live," she yelled. "Lily has always gone to private school. I'm used to designer brands. I'm used to weekend spas and dining out. You think that amount is enough?" Michael said that at that moment he felt something inside him crack, something that had been fragile for years. Vanessa. He searched for words, but his mouth was dry as sand. "We can adjust." "Adjust?" She laughed coldly. "Adjust to live like poor people? What can you do besides drag me down?" Lily was sitting in the corner with her doll, her big blue eyes wide. The 9-year-old didn't understand why her mother was so angry. She just looked between her parents with a confusion that could break any heart. Michael said that in his daughter's eyes, he saw something he had never seen before. Fear. "Mommy, did Daddy do something wrong?" Lily asked softly. Vanessa waved her off irritably. "Be quiet, the adults are talking." Michael felt his heart plunge into a deep pit. "Vanessa, you can't talk like this in front of her." "You think I care?" she snapped. "You have no money, that's it. I didn't get married to be the wife of a failure." That sentence was like a hammer smashing every illusion Michael had clung to. He said that in that moment, he saw their entire 10-year marriage play back like a slow-motion reel. The cold nights when she barely spoke to him, the dinners where she never asked how much he had earned, the vacations she bragged about to her friends. Michael pays for everything. Michael didn't argue, didn't beg, didn't fight back. He simply watched his wife finish packing the last 2 bags, then pull Lily to her feet. "We're going to my parents for a while." Vanessa said it like announcing the weather. "When you can prove your worth, I'll talk to you again." Then she walked out, leaving the door closing behind her like a final punctuation mark. That night, Michael called me, his voice drained. "Mom, you were right. Vanessa, she doesn't love me." A long silence. "She only loves the life she thought was mine." I didn't speak immediately. I let him sit with the silence, the kind that speaks louder than advice. Finally, I asked, "How do you feel?" "I feel empty." His voice trembled. "But I also feel like I'm finally seeing the real path in front of me." I closed my eyes, taking a slow breath. "Michael, sometimes the person who hurts you the most is the one who teaches you the most important lesson. Vanessa just showed you the truth you avoided for years." I walked to the window where the soft amber streetlights glowed against the sidewalk. "From now on, you don't have to pretend anymore. You don't have to play the role of a successful man just to keep a marriage that was never real." Michael's voice broke. "Mom, I don't understand how you can stay so calm." I let out a small laugh, because I already knew the outcome, and because I've been watching from a distance. "What do you mean?" "I mean, my son. The storm with Vanessa is only beginning. She still doesn't know what I know." Michael went silent. He didn't know what I was referring to, and I wasn't planning to tell him yet. I answered lightly, like a soft breeze with the sharpness of a thin blade. "Because you are learning to face the truth, and Vanessa is about to face hers. Meaning I am letting the wind blow in the right direction." I heard Michael let out a long breath, but this time it wasn't the sound of defeat. It was the sound of a man stepping out of the shadow he had created himself. When the call ended, I stood before the mirror and looked at my face, lined with wrinkles, filled with stories, shaped by storms I had survived. I smiled. At last, every piece of my plan was moving into place. I was never someone who sought conflict, but I never allowed anyone, not even a daughter-in-law, to diminish my dignity. If Vanessa believed I would rescue her again, she was wrong. Because this time, I wasn't carrying anyone's burden. This time, I was only directing the wind and letting the storm put every person exactly where they belonged. In the days after the confrontation between Michael and Vanessa, I kept my routine, waking early, brewing a cup of black coffee, and sitting by the window overlooking the small forest behind my house. But my heart no longer felt heavy. Once you see the true nature of things, your mind becomes strangely clear. I knew Vanessa would soon face the consequences she chose, and I knew I was ready for the next step. Not out of revenge, but out of fairness. And to give my son a lesson he would never forget. I called Brenda, my personal attorney for 18 years, a woman so sharp she could predict an opponent's next 3 moves just by reading a single line of a report. "Brenda," I said, "I need you to investigate someone's finances. His name is Derek Monroe." Brenda paused for a second, longer than usual. "Vanessa's father, correct? Any particular reason?" "I want to know the real picture of that family," I replied, as clearly as possible. Brenda asked no further questions. We had worked together long enough to understand that the things I didn't say were the ones that mattered. 3 days later, exactly at 7 p.m., the time Brenda always sent important reports, my phone lit up with a PDF file over 100 pages long. I opened it and read line by line, item by item, number by number, until my heart grew still. Derek Monroe's convenience store chain was drowning in debt, unpaid employee wages, unpaid suppliers, unpaid taxes, and most importantly, placed under expanded investigation by the IRS. Brenda added a short note, "Evelyn, he may face prison in 6 to 9 months." I sat in my chair for a long time, not out of shock, but because every missing puzzle piece had finally come together. Vanessa always bragged about how successful her father was, but it turned out her entire family lived off a thin coat of outward glamour, one that was now peeling away. They were no better than Michael at this moment, perhaps even worse. The next morning, I sent the entire file to Vanessa anonymously, a short email, no signature, with only one sentence. "The truth is not always what it appears to be." I didn't have to wait long. That afternoon, Brenda texted me, "Vanessa just contacted another lawyer. She's panicking now." I smiled, not out of satisfaction, just the feeling that everything was unfolding according to its own logic. No one can use money to look down on others, especially when that money does not actually exist. 2 days later, while I was watering the plants in the yard, a shiny black SUV stopped at my gate. I looked from a distance and immediately recognized the man stepping out. An expensive gray suit, a slightly crooked tie, dark circles under his eyes from lack of sleep. Derek Monroe. He, the one who once looked down on me at Michael's birthday party. The one who said, Michael's family should learn to strive harder. The one who called me an unemployed old woman living off her son. Today he stood outside my gate, his hands clasped tightly together. I let him wait 4 minutes, not for revenge, but so he would understand that today courtesy was something he needed to relearn from the beginning. When I walked out to open the gate, Derek immediately bowed his head. "Mrs. Evelyn, please give me a few minutes." His voice trembled, completely different from his former arrogance. "I'm listening," I said, keeping my tone calm. Derek took a deep breath. I'm asking you to help Michael and Vanessa reconcile. My daughter, she's falling apart. Everything happened too fast. I know she hasn't behaved properly, but please, give them a chance." I folded my arms, leaning lightly against the gate. You came to ask me that? After everything your family has said to me all this time? Derek bit his lip, lowering his head even further. I know. I was wrong. I misjudged you. But now is not the time to talk about the past. I just hope you can open your heart a little. Open my heart? I repeated, tilting my head slightly. An interesting phrase, especially coming from someone who's in trouble with the IRS. Derek turned pale. Clearly he understood that I knew the truth. I didn't come here to argue. He tried to remain composed. I came to beg. Vanessa will collapse if her marriage falls apart, and Lily as well. I let the silence stretch. Silence is what makes people reveal the truth. Finally, I said, all right, I'll sit down and talk, but the rules are set by me. Derek looked at me, his expression mixed with relief and fear. Thank you. I appreciate it. I neither nodded nor smiled. I simply turned, opening the gate just enough. Go home and rest. When I'm ready, I'll contact you. Derek nodded repeatedly, then hurried back to his car, as if standing in front of me was a weight too heavy for him to bear any longer. When the SUV left the neighborhood, I stood in the yard watching the maple leaves swirl in the autumn wind. Some people think retaliation means causing immediate pain, but I'm different. I don't need to do anything. I just need to let the truth reveal itself. And the truth now was very clear. Vanessa's family was not wealthy, not stable, not powerful. They were collapsing under the shiny facade they had built. Vanessa thought Michael was the burden, but now she knows. Her own family is the bottomless pit. I walked back into the house and closed the door, feeling the wind shifting. Not too strong, not too fast, but unmistakable. Vanessa's storm was only beginning, and I, the one who had once been, dismissed, insulted, pushed away from my own son's dinner table, was now the one directing the wind, choosing the direction and the timing. I placed my hand on my chest, feeling the steady, quiet rhythm of someone who had lived through many years of hurt and finally understood that true strength is not in shouting. It lies in clarity, in knowing how to wait, and in knowing exactly when to push a door, so that the entire room behind it collapses on its own. I gave a thin smile, almost invisible in the fading light. Vanessa, I whispered, not with malice, but like a prediction. You've only made it through the first round. I chose a late weekend afternoon to take the next step, not for revenge, but to restore the order this family had lost. The golden light of the day slanted through the living room window, casting a long shadow on the wooden floor. I stood there, glancing at the clock, my heart calm in a way that felt unusual. Exactly at 5 p.m., the doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw Vanessa standing on the porch. Her clothes were far simpler than before, her hair tied back hastily, her eyes swollen from sleepless nights. Beside her was Lily, wearing a pink backpack, holding tightly to her mother's arm. No trace remained of the prideful woman who once looked down on me. A cold wind swept past, fluttering the hem of Vanessa's shirt. We're here, Vanessa said softly, barely daring to meet my eyes. I stepped aside, offering space. Come in, we need to talk. Lily walked in first. The moment she saw me, she stopped, bowed deeply, and said in a trembling voice, Grandma, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that on Daddy's birthday. I didn't know. I didn't understand. Her voice broke, her eyes shimmering with tears. I stood still for a few seconds, letting myself feel the sincerity. This time, I knew the apology wasn't forced. Children have strong intuition. When a family falls apart, they sense who truly loves them. I gently placed my hand on her shoulder. Grandma knows. You were just influenced by adults. What matters is that now you know what's right. Lily rushed into my arms. A small hug, but enough to soften the heart of a woman who had survived many storms. Vanessa watched, her hands twisting together, her thumb rubbing her wedding ring until her skin turned white. She sat down, her shoulders slumped like someone who had lost her balance. She tried to speak, but the words came out like they were dragged over gravel. I'm sorry for what Lily said and for what I said to Michael. I sat across from her, my hand wrapped around a warm teacup. Are you sorry because you feel guilty or because you're desperate? The question made Vanessa freeze. 2 seconds of silence felt like a full minute. I saw her throat tighten as she swallowed. Both, she finally said, but I don't want my family to fall apart. I looked straight into her eyes, now void of all sharpness. Then we're going to reset the rules. I opened the folder on the table. Inside were 4 pages of documents Brenda had drafted with full clauses. This is the agreement between me, Michael, and you. I said each word clearly. 4 conditions. If you agree, I'll support your family's chance to reconcile. If not, you're on your own. Vanessa swallowed. I'm listening. I took a deep breath, then began. First, Michael must be financially independent. You may not control, demand, or require access to his paycheck. Vanessa's eyes widened. I don't control, but if he can't, I raised my hand to stop her. You need to learn to live within your real means. She bit her lip but nodded. Second, you will work part-time at my company, a basic position, basic pay, no special privileges. Vanessa shot up from her seat, nearly shouting, "You want me to work for you?" "No," I answered calmly. "I want you to relearn the value of labor. If you accept, I will pay you fairly. If not, you're free to find work elsewhere." Vanessa trembled with anger, but she didn't argue. Desperation has a way of teaching silence. Third, Lily must apologize publicly before the family. Lily looked up, worried. I stroked her hair. "Not to embarrass you, to teach you responsibility, even as a child." Lily nodded hard. "I'll do it. I'll say sorry to Daddy in front of everyone." I smiled at her, a smile I rarely gave to adults. "Fourth," I said, turning to Vanessa, "you must also apologize publicly. No excuses, no deflecting, no blaming everything on Michael." Vanessa's face drained of color like I had asked her to step off a cliff. "You want me to humiliate myself in front of the family?" "No," I replied. "I want you to learn humility. And I want Michael to see that you are truly changing, not because of money." The air grew heavy. Only the ticking of the wall clock filled the room, reminding Vanessa that her time was running out. Finally, Vanessa's hands dropped, and she sank back into the chair. "I agree." Her voice was as soft as the wind. I agree to everything." I didn't show triumph. I simply turned to the last page of the folder. "This is a binding contract. There are penalties if you break any of the 4 conditions." I placed the pen in front of her. Vanessa stared at it for a long time, her hand shaking so badly the cap clicked against the table. She signed, slowly, each stroke seeming to pull the air out of her chest. Once she finished, Lily ran to me, wrapping her little arms around my waist. "Grandma, I'm really sorry. I love Grandma." I bent down to hug her back. It was a hug I hadn't known I needed. I looked at Vanessa. "You know, I don't hate you. I never did. I only hated how you treated my son. But today, You have a chance to change, and so do I." Vanessa lowered, her hair falling forward to hide half her face. I'll do it right. I promise. Promise. A simple word, but when spoken by someone who had lived pridefully her whole life, it weighed more than metal. I stood up, gathered the documents, and said, "Get ready. We're going to hold a family gathering. There, everyone will hear the sincere apologies, and they will witness our changes." Vanessa looked up, anxious. "When?" "Saturday evening." "That's so soon. You'll manage," I cut in, "because that is when the real test begins." I glanced at Lily, who was still holding her mother's hand. This family has a chance to heal, but it must start the right way. I turned and walked toward the kitchen, placing my hand on the wooden counter, feeling each grain the same way I felt the journey I had walked. In my heart, a quiet thought rose. The queen had fallen, but a family can rebuild if they learn to bow at the right time. I knew the public battle still lay ahead, but I was ready. And this time, I would be the one redefining the word family. Saturday evening arrived faster than I expected. All day long, I was busy preparing the garden, hanging strands of warm yellow lights along the wooden fence, setting up an extra long table with a white cloth, placing hydrangea vases I had bought at the morning farmer's market. I wanted the space warm enough for emotions to be expressed without anyone feeling judged. By 7 p.m., the lights were on and the whole garden glowed with a soft, summer-gathering kind of warmth. But no one was comfortable. The atmosphere was tight as a stretched string. Michael's siblings were there. Jonathan had flown in from Seattle, standing beside me like a quiet anchor. Vanessa's family also came, looking awkward and guarded. Her mother pulled her coat tight around her, and her father, Derek, stood still, his face heavy as stone. I watched everything in silence. Then Lily stepped out. She wore the light blue dress I gave her last year. Her small hands were clenched, her lips trembling, but her eyes, those eyes shone with the courage of a child who had gone through more upheaval than any little girl should. I gave her a small nod, and she nodded back. Lily took a deep breath, then turned toward the whole family. I'm sorry for what I said at Daddy's birthday." Her voice shook like a thread pulled too tight. "I said Grandma was a freeloader, but I didn't understand. I just repeated Mommy's words. I was wrong, really wrong." Her voice tightened. "Grandma, I'm truly sorry." The whole garden went silent, quiet enough to hear the wind move through the maple leaves. Then Lily burst into tears, a clear, piercing cry, painful but not shameful, the cry of a child beginning to understand responsibility. I walked over and held her. "Grandma forgives you, and Grandma is proud of you." Suddenly, behind us, the family began to clap, not loud applause. Soft, small, but sincere. I saw Michael's eyes turn red. Jonathan touched my shoulder gently. Even Vanessa's mother bowed her head. But everyone's attention shifted when Vanessa stepped forward. I had never seen her like this. No glossy nails, no elegant silk dress. Vanessa stood there in an old sweater and simple jeans, her face unable to hide exhaustion. She walked toward me slowly, like someone carrying the weight of an entire world. Then, before anyone could react, Vanessa sank to her knees. A wave of whispers rippled across the yard. Her parents froze. Michael was stunned, and I stood still, looking straight at her. Vanessa's voice came out hoarse and slow, each word dragged from the deepest part of her humiliation. "Evelyn, I'm sorry. I'm sorry for the years I was ungrateful, disrespectful, and hurtful to you. I'm sorry I let my eyes be blinded by money and pride. I'm sorry for treating Michael like a burden." Her shoulders shook as if they might break. "I know. I've done so much wrong. I want to make things right. I want to be a better mother to Lily and a grateful wife to Michael. Please, forgive me." I heard someone inhale sharply behind me. Clearly, her parents had never imagined seeing their daughter kneel before anyone, let alone before me. The shame on their faces said everything. I let the silence stretch. Then I leaned down and placed my hand on her shoulder. "Stand up." She looked up, eyes red and wet. "I will accept this apology," I said, "if it comes with action. Words aren't enough. But today, I see a different Vanessa." I helped her rise. Once she was standing, Michael stepped forward and placed a hand on her shoulder. She grabbed his hand like someone trying to reclaim a support she had lost long ago. Michael turned to me. His eyes were warm, a warmth like being reborn, as if his heart, buried for years under pressure, shame, and forced strength, had finally found air again. "Mom," his voice cracked, "thank you." I didn't answer, but I knew. Everything was moving in the right direction. The gathering continued, but it was completely different now. No more avoidance. No more condescending looks from Vanessa's family. No more invisible wall between the two sides of the family. Jonathan chatted with Derek, for the first time without stiffness. Lily ran around the yard, her laughter ringing like the sound of hope. Vanessa helped me serve the food, her hands still trembling a bit, but her eyes calmer than before. As she set a tray of tartlets on the table, she whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on us." I looked at her for a long moment. "Thank you," I replied, "for having the courage to change." At the end of the night, when everyone had left, I stood alone in the garden, watching the strands of yellow lights flicker like the house's gentle breathing. I felt something in the air that I hadn't seen in my family for a long time: warmth, respect, gratitude. But what made me happiest wasn't the apologies or the hugs. It was what was quietly beginning to grow. A lesson about self-respect, a lesson about responsibility, a lesson about the true value of a family. I looked up at the night sky where a few scattered stars were glowing. In that moment, I thought of my husband, the one who had gone before me, the one who once believed our family would find its way back someday. I whispered softly, "Richard, do you see it? Everything is finding its place again. You'd be proud of us." And I knew. Tonight, a new chapter of my family had begun. 3 months passed so quickly that sometimes I had to ask myself whether everything that happened was real or just a long dream. A dream where all the broken pieces were gathered and rearranged into something new, not perfect, but stronger. The change came from the smallest things, and those small things slowly pulled my entire family in a new direction. Michael called me almost every night not to ask for money, but to share his work updates with the quiet pride of a man standing steadily for the first time on his own ability. "Mom, today I closed the duplex in Tacoma." "Mom," my supervisor praised how well I handled the Western Division. "Mom, this month, I paid every bill myself." I sat at the kitchen table listening to him, my heart light as early season wind. No more desperate clinging, no more shame, no more slumped shoulders waiting for rescue. Michael, the son who once lived inside a shell of pride and fear of failure, was truly growing up at 42. I silently knew my husband Richard would be smiling with pride. And Vanessa. If someone had told me 3 months ago that my daughter-in-law could become a woman who listens, who thanks, and who corrects herself, I would never have believed it. But I saw it with my own eyes, little by little. She came to my company on time every day, even if it was only a part-time customer service job. In the first days, her hands shook when customers complained, but just weeks later I saw her guiding new clients, her eyes no longer arrogant but calm and patient. One afternoon, Vanessa walked into my office while I was reviewing the quarterly report. "Mom," she hesitated, "thank you because of this job. I feel useful." I looked at her for a moment. Her face had less makeup, but it was more beautiful because of its honesty. "You did it yourself," I said. "All I did was push a door open." Vanessa gave a soft laugh, her eyes a bit red but full of a gratitude I had never seen in her. Lily was the biggest surprise of all. She came to my house every weekend bringing a pink apron with a cat on it that she insisted on wearing in the kitchen. She learned how to slice carrots, whisk eggs, and season salt with the kind of careful seriousness that was almost funny. But what touched me most was the sentence she said almost every week. "Grandma, I love being here. I feel peaceful." A 9-year-old saying peaceful with such sincerity is rare. I knew she could feel the difference in how I treated her. No pressure, no scolding, no tension. Just quiet air, the soft sound of chopping vegetables, the smell of baked goods mixing with peppermint tea. And I realized I needed those moments with Lily more than I thought. As for Derek Monroe, Vanessa's father, the truth finally caught up to him. News of the IRS expanding its investigation spread quickly among the small business community in his area. 2 stores had to temporarily close. Another was sued by a supplier for unpaid invoices. Derek, who once held his head high in front of me, now quietly texted Vanessa, "Evelyn's son and daughter-in-law are the only ones helping us keep any shred of dignity." And then, one rainy afternoon, Vanessa came to my house, her eyes still swollen. "Mom," she said, "if you hadn't investigated and sent the documents early, we don't know what would have happened to my family. Thank you for saving us." I didn't take credit. I simply placed my hand over hers. "Whether I saved you or not doesn't matter. What matters is that you learned what you needed to learn." Vanessa lowered her head. "Yes." In those 3 months, I realized something precious. I no longer felt used. No one came knocking to ask for money. No one said disrespectful or belittling things to me. No one dumped responsibility on my shoulders and walked away. They came to ask my opinion, for guidance, to share small joys, big worries, or simply to sit in the kitchen and listen to me brew tea. For the first time in many years, I felt like I was in the right place. Not the family's bottomless wallet, but the head of the family, the steady center, the one who brought experience and calm. Jonathan was the first to notice. On his most recent visit, he looked around the house, saw my children talking together, saw Vanessa clearing plates, saw Lily grinning as she placed spoons into dessert bowls, then turned to me. "Mom," he said, his voice full of emotion, "you did something most people can't. You brought the whole family back on track." I laughed. "Jonathan, I just did what needed to be done." But he shook his head. "No, you did more. I'm proud of you." My heart warmed as if someone had wrapped a soft wool scarf around me in winter. Then one morning, while I was watering the tomato trellis, I suddenly realized something simple but important. My life was finally peaceful. No more quiet sobs in my bedroom out of hurt. No more silent disappointment when opening messages filled with demands. No more feeling like a burden. I had learned to love myself before loving the people I cared for. And when I did that, my family learned to do the same. Finally, I sat down on the wooden chair in the backyard, watching sunlight filter through the leaves, listening to Lily's laughter drifting out from the kitchen. Michael was showing Vanessa how to cook the pasta dish he had just learned from a coworker. Jonathan was on his way, saying he would bring an apple pie. I wondered. In all the years I spent struggling and trying to hold everything together, had I ever imagined I would see this? A family that isn't perfect, but knows how to love the right way. A family that knows how to apologize, how to correct itself, how to rise again. A family where I no longer have to endure, but can actually enjoy. I leaned my head back slightly, closed my eyes, and said softly, "Richard, everything is finally okay." And I knew this wasn't just 3 months that changed their lives. It was 3 months that changed me. There were afternoons when I sat alone on the porch, watching the golden sunlight spill across the grass like a warm blanket stretching to the end of the yard. In that quiet, I often thought about the journey of the past few months, a journey that started from a humiliating birthday party, from a sentence spoken by a child I loved, and from the laughter of my own son. Just one moment that seemed meaningless, yet enough to open an entirely new door. I thought about the version of myself that day, standing silent in the middle of the laughter, chest tight as if being squeezed, heart so empty it felt numb. And I also thought about the me of now, calm, strong, understanding my own worth more clearly than ever. I, Evelyn Brooks, am no longer the old freeloader in anyone's eyes, not because they changed what they called me, but because I changed myself. Looking back on the past 3 months, I understood something I never had the courage to face before. Sometimes, if we want others to grow, we have to let them hit bottom. We have to let them see the bare truth they've been avoiding. Michael needed to see his own weakness in order to stand on his own feet. Vanessa needed to lose what she thought was secure to understand the real value of family. Lily needed to learn that responsibility begins with even the smallest words. And I needed to learn to stop sacrificing unconditionally, because when you give too much without setting boundaries, love becomes a burden, and kindness, without limits, becomes a bridge for others to walk across without ever looking back. Now my family has changed. Not perfect, not always harmonious, but there is respect. There is listening. There is gratitude. Something I once thought I would never receive from my own flesh and blood. Michael works hard every day, and sometimes just seeing him step out of his car with confidence makes my heart feel as light as the wind. He is no longer someone who only knows how to take, but a man who helps, who makes up for the past, who apologizes, and who repairs what is broken. Vanessa has learned the greatest lesson of her life, that a strong woman is not someone who demands, but someone who stands up after she falls. I don't need her to be perfect. I only need to see that she is genuinely trying, and I have seen that. And Lily. Every weekend, her laughter in my kitchen is the sound that makes my house feel young again, as if life itself wanted to give me a second chance to guide a child through love rather than through exhausting sacrifice. I look at my family and realize I am no longer pushed to the side. I am the keeper of the flame, the one who reminds them to be kind, the one who teaches them gratitude, something the younger generation often forgets. These days, the late years of my life have become wonderfully light. I have time to cook the dishes I enjoy, read books in the morning sun, tend to the lavender bushes in my yard, and listen to my children's and grandchildren's little stories without swallowing any hidden pain. No one knocks on my door asking for money. No one sees me as an obligation. No one forgets my presence. They come because they want me there, not because they need something from me. And for a mother, that is the greatest gift. I tell this story not to boast and not to blame anyone. I tell it because I know there are so many people out there like me, mothers, grandmothers, older women who are dismissed, overlooked, treated as old, unnecessary, or a burden. I want them to know no one has the right to treat you as something worthless, no matter who they are. Not your husband, not your child, not your daughter-in-law or son-in-law. If I, a 66-year-old woman who spent a lifetime sacrificing, can stand up and reclaim my voice, then you can too. You deserve love with boundaries. You deserve respect. You deserve to be heard. If my family can change, then yours can too. And now, as the story closes, I have only one thing left to say. If I could do it, you can do it. And I hope to hear your own story. Thank you for staying with me all the way to the final line of this story. I truly appreciate your presence, whether you're watching from the United States, Vietnam, or anywhere in the world. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Have you ever experienced a moment that woke you up the way mine did? If you enjoy stories like this, please like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the next ones. Thank you from the bottom of my heart.